up a seat at the bar to join us for another episode of McAnally's Pubcast, a podcast exploring the fun and fantastical mind of Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files series. Host Tanzan, Maggie, and me bring you another round of literary analysis on this immense, immersive, and colorful environment inhabited by Harry Dresden, the world's only licensed private investigator and professional wizard. Join an active and engaged community of new and die-hard dedicated fans focused on the fabulous themes, theories, characters, context, lore, and more. This is McAnally's Dresden Files Pubcast by Free Flow Rambling. Conjure by it at your own risk.
Welcome to the McAnally's Pubcast, brought to you by Free Flow Rambling. This is episode 10.29, Heavenly Floatation Device, where we are covering the novel Death Masks. My name is Tanzan, and I am joined by Maggie.
Hello, hello.
And Jess.
Hola. So super fun fact is that our math didn't work out, so you were going to get one episode in August, and then we're on hiatus until September 1st. Woo! Yeah! We couldn't be succinct enough to fit with our own schedule.
We just didn't want to leave them an entire month, so this way, technically, we're not.
Exactly. So we were actually going to have episodes until August 4th, and then we will return September 1st. Right, so we thought today was going to be our last episode, but we actually were not able to fit these two chapters together, so we're going to be back to talk with you guys next week as well. So, you're welcome, and I'm sorry.
Thank you to our Patreon subscribers for your generous support. It's people like you who help us to do what we do. If you're not yet a Patreon subscriber, sign up today and get a fuck ton of bonus content, kick-ass merch, behind-the-scenes outtakes, and more. Sign up today at www.patreon.com/freeflowrambling.
Chapter 32. Gard flies the helicopter to intercept the train, which Michael, Sanya, Marcone, and Dresden rappel onto. The group confronts Nicodemus and manages to get the shroud away and break the curse.
So I love how Dresden is kind of like repelled by this repelling idea. So yes, sends them off with Ride of the Valkyries, and then after just a few minutes, it starts getting a little bumpy.
Gee, I wonder why.
Apparently the stabilizers are run by the onboard computer, which has failed, says Marcone. I can only speculate as to why.
I just have this like image of the orchestra playing Flight of the Valkyries, da, 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 and like this one out of tune trumpet.
So you know in movies when like people are like they're all about to get on the helicopter or the boat or the whatever, but like the Hulk character or whoever has to be like strapped to the back of it or something like that, because it's like, how are we going to get the Hulk onto our airplane, or how are we going to get the dolphin into the airplane, or how are we get, like, you know, and there's always just, I'm shocked that everyone still keeps letting Harry, like, okay, get into the helicopter, and they're not just like, we're going to tie you to a rope.
How do we
dangle
fit
you
a
as far away as we
Faraday
can.
cage into a helicopter?
Exactly.
Although there is that. So, I mean, on the one hand, yeah, I don't know that would work, because strapping him to the back or the bottom, I think, still puts him in close enough proximity that it's not just, but
plus makes him more scared, so he breaks it even more.
And then he's going to be, keep control of your emotions now, Harry. We're just going to strap you onto the bottom of our helicopter. But also
temporary sedation.
Well, except usually he's
do
running
more drugs,
into
Harry.
a day, so I can't. But it's like the beginning of this whole episode thing where he tried to do his Faraday cage thing on the Larry Fowler show, and that was still that whole discussion of how do you use power to stop your power to pretend not to have power. But
well, I was just thinking about the helicopter because like one syringe to knock him out and the other syringe full of adrenaline to wake him.
I was going to say right because you need to.
Hospitals can do it. Marcone should have access to that.
Yeah, he's like, I'm like, I don't even want to walk like behind or have him walk behind me on the thing, but I'm gonna let you shoot me up full of narcotics, Marcone. Sure, let's do that.
That's his business.
That is his stock and trade. That is his trade, whatever. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
I did like that after how Marcone sort of quipped sarcastically, like you just quoted, but then Harry quips back his little snide little remarks.
Blow me. Excuse me.
Where Gard is like, oh, what? It's all right, Miss Gard. Compassion dictates that we must make allowances. Mr. Dresden is diplomatically challenged individual. He should be in a shelter for the tactless. Yes, that's very appropriate, actually.
Marcone has some good.
Just like 24 hours later, he was like blowing up Marcone's gala, so yeah.
Yeah, right.
Fuck this guy.
Right.
Dresden asks Marcone to speak privately, and they switch channels. Harry asks Marcone why he didn't tell him that he hadn't sent Franklin, which Marcone asks if he'd have believed him anyways, even if he had, which is a big nope. He also still considers Harry a prospective grunt.
Yeah, he can still come work for me. I found this kind of an interesting exchange, like, the first time. And I'm like, I don't know if it's just so that Marcone can say what he says, but basically, yeah, he's like, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, oh, that I didn't send the gunman after you? And he's like, yeah. He's like, would you have believed me? No. He's like, would you have thought I was lying to you? Yeah. Well, then obviously, why the fuck, you know what I mean? I'm like, unless, like, the only reason for that is basically for him to say, okay, then why would I have wasted the time and effort and made you more suspicious, right? It shows Marcone's thinking ahead, Marcone's reasoning, but I'm like, yeah, from Harry's perspective, I'm like, why didn't you tell me that thing I wasn't going to believe?
Well, and it worked out to Harry's advantage anyways to not, to just observe him anyway, because he...
Well, the thing is that Marcone had been completely surprised that Harry had been involved in that in the first place as well. He didn't know that Harry had been with Franklin when he sent them, right?
Yeah.
So... Why are we calling... Is it Vincent Franklin? What are we talking about?
Franklin is the gunman, who we didn't know until this point when Marcone says, what, that I sent Mr. Franklin after you?
Okay.
So he sent him after...
Why are we saying Franklin? Yeah.
So yeah, Franklin was going after Vincent, and Harry was just the collateral in that
Marcone
instance.
didn't know that Harry was with Vincent, right? And he was clearly shocked when Harry brought it up. So it's fair, too, that Marcone just was like, had to take a minute himself to be like, when the fuck did I send gunmen after you? I'm so confused. Oh... I did dispatch gunmen yesterday. Harry probably was there. That's bitch.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, it also seems to me, like, in that moment, Marcone, like, because of the whole, like, Marcone blinked, that Marcone was fully caught off guard and wasn't ready to be like, now's the time to lie to Harry because he wouldn't believe me, even if it seemed he was much more like, what the fuck is even talking about right now?
Well, it kind of makes sense, too, because... He may because part of you was like, well, how would he know to find Vincent there? And he doesn't know that Harry's there, but he didn't know that Vincent was going to talk to Harry afterwards and all that kind of stuff, right? So it makes sense that he would have known Harry was going to be at the Fowler show, but when he sent the guy to snipe him, he wasn't necessarily expecting them to be side by side and for Harry to...
Well, no, that's what's even funnier about it, is that Marcone stole the shroud, and then the guy supposedly looking for the shroud is like... All right, I'm going to book myself on the Larry Fowler show. Like, Marcone must have been like, what in the world is going on right now? Like, what the fuck do you mean this guy who's supposedly hunting me and the stolen shroud is going on Larry Fowler?
In this day and age, everybody takes every opportunity for, to try and get a little good publicity. And the church has really been, like, through the ringer for the past, couple thousand years. Like, let's just take this moment to say, hey.
It's like putting children on, like, milk boxes or whatever like that. It's like, put the Shroud of Turin on Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
Everyone will be talking about it, and we'll all go see, and...
Yeah. But, yeah, so, yeah, I could see, that to me was always kind of like, why, he was surprised at that, because it was like... Because, part of me is like, well, how the fuck would you not know? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, because you would have been going... Just because he was, But anyways, that whole... But yeah, basically exactly when Harry's just like, I wouldn't have. So it's like, well, cool. So fucking, yeah. Then, of course, like, Marcone was like, again, that's his foresight in saying, like, yeah, this is just going to make more problems. Like, the more I say I didn't do it, the more you're going to think I'm lying. So I might as well just save my breath. And, I like that he points out here that he's like, given enough time, you're usually a pretty perceptive person. Generally speaking, you are quite perceptive given enough time, right? So he's like, eventually... I know you're going to come to the realization that, whatever, I wasn't there for you and why I would have been after the other guy.
In this point in time, we are on the same team.
Yeah. And so then, their whole thing, goes on about, okay, well, why do you want it? And blah, blah, blah. And it's, again, Marcone's like, none of your business. And there's like, actually, literally, right now it is. I've literally been hired to do this, so yeah. But he's like, well, what do you want? And he's like, the Darren's gonna kill everybody. And he's like, yeah, sounds like a good enough reason for me. And Harry's, the whole like, well, why don't I believe you? And again, just that perfect, like, full circle, come around, call back, and Marcone's teeth flashed, because given enough time, you are a perceptive individual.
So this is where it's very funny, is that they're headed to St. Louis again, because that's the next closest international airport in America.
Yeah.
So for, Nicodemus, in order to spread this plague as fast and as far as possible, it's a really good place to go. It's just very funny that you've had, Sanya and Michael locked up in St. Louis this whole book, and just when they get back to Chicago, it's like, all right, turn it around, boys, let's go.
Now this I wonder, is this purely coincidence, or is this a little nugget of again, foresight, intelligent planning on Nicodemus's part, that they're going to be like, oh, now I have to go to St. Louis, and they're going to be like, we already, right, red herring, right? They already said they were going to St. Louis, and it was totally a dead end. Oh, now they're just going to go to St. Louis. You know what I mean?
Or it could just be like a little bit of a foreshadowing that there's trouble to be had in St. Louis.
See, this is what I think it was. It was more like God was like, you need to be in St. Louis, and they got to St. Louis, and they're like, oh, we don't need to be here.
Oh, by God,
left.
you mean Jim Butcher.
And God was like, I put you in St. Louis for a reason. Why did you leave?
Maybe, except
you could have been there already.
It could have been. See, again, with that whole divine intervention, I feel like he doesn't usually screw up the timing. If nothing else, Michael and the Knights have shown they have impeccable timing.
They had to have come back to interfere at the airport to be on the way to St. Louis.
Yes, otherwise, they wouldn't have had a reason to switch to St. Louis.
Which does make sense,
But my impression was more like, because they got a tip. My impression was more like that was the Denarians trying to get some or all of them out of the picture. Which, right, they didn't, all of them went, only 2 of them, but again, then they only had Shiro to deal with, right? Because again, if they'd had all 3 of them
they leaked Plan B, so they could go with Plan A, and then they ended up needing Plan B anyways. At which point didn't matter, because the Knights had already returned back to Plan A.
But that's what I mean, right? Was it just like, oh, we kind of sent them on the little wild goose chase, and hey, yeah, now it turns out we do have to use that one? Or was it more like, hey, also, if we send them, because again, there's a dozen places he could have sent them to get them out of the way, so was it almost more like, again, that, but we already went, it was a wild goose chase the first time. Are they trying to double bluff us or whatever, Or was it
Which could be totally fair, except for the point where all the characters in this book are just like, now we've done our homework and we absolutely know we need to go to St. Louis.
Well, right.
We're not wondering at all. We're going to St. Louis immediately.
Right. And I mean, Shiro overheard them or whatever, too, and stuff like that, right? But yeah, just sort of, again, right, with the hindsight is like, was it purely, or like you say, was it just they had it in their head because that was their plan B, or were they, trying to screw them up and be like, well, if we send them and then they come back, they're not going to want to go back again because they're going to think
It just seems to me that Jim Butcher could have had them, locked up in, Reading.
Well, that's what I mean,
and then just also, but the fact that he used St. Louis twice for both, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, right? Is that supposed to be the Denarians' cleverness and trying to be...
The Denarians?
That feels like a lot of thinking for me.
Which makes sense for Nicodemus. I don't know about Butcher. Sorry, Butcher, love you. I don't know. I don't know, Again, was it just coincidence, whatever?
Do you imagine you make Harry as smart as he is, you make Marcone as devious as he is, you make Nicodemus as evil as it is, and everyone's like, yeah, but Jim Butcher's not smart enough to be that devious. They're all his. He created them all.
This is true.
But no one's as cutting as charity because of him.
But in this particular instance, this is what we're debating, is whether it was a purposefully planned double bluff or whether it was a, because again, sometimes they're like, well, we just don't want to bring 50,000 places into it. We're already, again, we need a doctor. We're not going to make up a new doctor. We're going to bring in our medical examiner because you can double as a doctor, right? And we're going to,
I mean, this is the same guy who wanted to originally call this book Holy Sheep. So,
really,
that's what he said during an interview. Who knows how serious he was? But
it wouldn't have worked though because of the
the whole lettering thing,
the lettering scheming. But other than that, right, this is probably the only reason why he couldn't.
But again, this book came out in 2003, right? Which is when all of his books, these 5 books were all written
very close together.
Very close together to the point where the first several hadn't even been published yet by the time he got around to these later books.
Yeah.
So, later books, But he might not have had that idea to do the same titling at the point when he was first naming these all the first time through, right? Because we know the first book was supposed to be named...
Yeah, it basically was...
Shoodle Shumlancely, It was like a mix between a magic word and a gun word. I can't remember what it is right now.
Yeah. Shablam?
I do recall you bringing that up. I cannot recall it off the top of my head either. I know it wasn't that, obviously. No, I know, but very early on, basically once he went with that, he knew, because I do remember him saying very early on that, he was kind of like, oh, this would be cool, and other people were like, oh, that's clever, and then it wasn't, he sort of did the first 1 or 2 and then realized, oh, I'm fucked for the next 20 books, I have to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Well, and you don't know we don't know anything about what Jim Butcher's process is. He may have had something that was much more elaborate for St. Louis and for the Knights that 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 ended up
A
on
deleted scene, yeah, who knows?
It's getting cut, but the easiest way to keep it in there is just cut this whole section here, but they still went. And
Yeah.
I will say though, the titling though, like, it's clearly worked out. I mean, you're 17 books in and you're still fine with the way that works. To the point where even the law is still following
Technically,
the rules,
yeah.
right? Because that's
The law.
it's a novella. It's a little bit different than anything
So it
else
could be
he's
a little
done,
bit
right?
shorter. So it's 3 and 3 instead of 4 and 4.
Well, but the point is that it's he hasn't bothered to keep up with that scheme for all his short stories.
Yes, no.
But the law is more than a short story, so it still has, like, it still follows the rules, you know? Basically, all of this is to say that they know, they are through all the connections between Gard and the Knights and God and dying
Cherub being
knights
like, by
on
the way, I
table
overheard them. They're going to
and
St. Louis.
All of these things. They know, they're also able to determine which train Cardenarians would have caught through the power of elimination, right?
Yes.
So, they are
Marcone is just that connected.
they narrow down exactly which train into St. Louis. They know exactly where they gotta be. They bombard it with the helicopter.
In all fairness, though, this was... Because, again, I don't think we have, like, nearly as many trains running as we do, like, planes and things like that on a consistent basis. Do you think?
I don't know about America, but I personally live next door to a train, and we get one every half an hour.
Well, if they're going
True, but that's just one train. It's going to be really easy to figure out what...
It's not the same one train, though. It's not the same train doing a full circuit around the city.
Okay, but we literally have, like, one... Like, we don't have 50 train routes through our city.
No, we have one. We have one. That
So
cuts
it
through the
doesn't
city.
fucking matter what time the train leaves. It's going to be on that route.
Yes, okay.
It's not going to be difficult to figure out which train is leaving Calgary to get to Winnipeg or wherever the fuck they go from here.
Still
right?
saying, though, every 30 minutes is a new train to deal with.
Yeah, but you're just driving along one track, and again, they're like, we left the airport, like, we chased Nicodemus out of the airport at 10 o'clock.
Well, I guess it's easier to see when it's actually the actual route as opposed to the starting destination, which is probably what you're thinking of, because there is a lot of, like, interchange in the city. But they're, like, outside, I think, already.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're already getting out, but that's what I mean, right, is that you have, like, 150 planes leaving from an airport in literally, like, every direction every half an hour. You have, like, 4 train lines, maybe.
They do try to explain it off a little bit, at least.
And then, saying
that it's not going to be a passenger train because they don't want to involve people.
Yeah, and she's like, basically, like, from when we chased them out of the airport to right now, so within this half an hour, 4 trains have left or whatever, right? Again, it has to be whatever's left recently, because if the train left that long before, they're not catching up and hopping on it.
I'm taking the stance now to play devil's advocate, but I didn't start my sentence by saying this was unrealistic.
You kind of did. That was the impression you
I was
gave.
trying to say, like, they're able to determine that, oh, there's a freight one and a passenger one into this one.
Well,
like,
I guess you just made it sound like through all of their connections, they were able to, like, there was 100 to choose from.
Well, I do think it is impressive that they were able to still, like, okay, like, you get the helicopter, you figure out where we're going, you figure out the train.
I mean,
very
it is some,
efficient.
but I just feel that it's not as, because, yeah, again, they're like, there's 3 that are leaving, 2 freight and 1 passenger. He's like, okay, well, we can automatically eliminate the passenger because they don't want to, which is kind of funny because I would have thought that would have been my first choice because I'm like, oh, these people to infect.
That's what I was thinking too, is passenger would be the first choice.
Yeah,
So,
and you're
let's
like-
start now.
And you're like, that's perfect. You've got 2 freight and 1 passenger. They're going to be on the passenger train. Then he immediately goes, we eliminate the passenger train. Yeah. And then, so Marcone basically says, we got even odds. It's a 50-50. It's this one or that one.
And then luckily,
So they do kind of
you know, Michael has his whole, like, Denarian stench seeker, so...
Actually,
There you
that
go.
is kind of surprising that they didn't do a passenger train now that you make that point.
Yeah, that's because that's what I
infect.
assumed as well, too, is like, yeah, let's start now, infect this bitch, and go.
But they were heading, I mean, this is the whole point, is right now, they are heading from Chicago to St. Louis, right? This is just a train to get them from Chicago to St. Louis. Again, once they get to St. Louis, then they're planning to head into a major airport and infect everybody there, right? So, again, I could see...
I just think
'cause they're
about
not-
the efficiency that Nicodemus wants to go with. Like,
Yeah.
he's all about, like...
Well, I agree, and that's why I initially thought that, but Harry's got a good point that because they're not getting on a plane in St. Louis, they just want to wander around the airport, right? So they can have 50 goons with guns can walk into an airport because it's not until you get on a plane that you go through the security checks, right? So same thing, it makes sense that way. I'm like, oh, I do get that you're right to get on the train,
there would have been some kind of, check, whatever for that. They would have had, like you say, had tickets for everybody. Or right here, they're like, we just want to get to.
Yeah,
and again, like I say, we're just literally like hobos. They're going to hop a train and get there. And then again, they're going to head to a major, major hub and just infect all the people milling around the airport, right? So I'm like, yeah, you could have had that opportunity to get a few more people on the way. But since the train is not the goal, I'm like, I do get.
Once they've determined which train they're going to get, no matter how realistic or not, is then, belaying down to the train. And obviously the knights are the coolest people in the world because they're just like, give me a rope and we'll jump. Basically, like, no problem.
I'm gonna fly like motherfucking Superman. I don't care. God will provide me.
Okay, that's Michael.
I will land on this train top, no issue.
Michael is like, no problem. That's how we gotta go. I'm going. He does, in all fairness, because when Dresden finds out, he's like, say what? And he does say, in all fairness, that Sanya does react much the same way. Sanya just goes with it then. Sanya's like, are you kidding? And they're like, no. And he's like, fine. So Michael's like, no problem. I'll go. Because exactly, God will provide whatever.
Well, I was
he's
gonna
like,
say, it's very heroic and noble and stuff that Michael is always the first one who stops him. He's like, do me first.
If this isn't gonna work, I'm gonna go splat before any of you. And then
but
you
it's
guys
also
can
a
find
little bit
another
of
way.
like, oh yeah, the one guy that God's gonna make sure he saves. Yeah, sure, you go first. Right?
Yeah, right. It's a little, it's kind of like
it's
that.
not a great
Give it to
guinea
Mikey.
pig.
Mikey, he'll eat anything. I'm like, well, then that's a really bad test of whether it's good cereal. Because he'll eat anything. So Michael will always survive. So sure, it doesn't matter. Yeah, he can. But then again, Sonny makes no bones about it or whatever. He just like gets up and goes then. And then Dresden. I kind of gotta be with Dresden here. On my part of me, like this does sound like it could be really fun. I don't know that I would want my first time to be out of a moving helicopter onto a moving train.
Right.
When the guy who straps you to everything. Marcone is the one who's like in charge of if your straps are working and stuff like that. This is the perfect sabotage moment.
See, and I would have thought that they would have chosen Dresden to be the first one going because he keeps fucking up the instrumentation.
Yeah, right.
Be like, get off my fucking
easier on everyone
helicopter.
But they know Dresden's a little bitch.
Yeah. But I love this. This is like this just screams to me like every 80s action movie ever. Like, rappelling out of a helicopter onto a moving train. Like, oh.
Yep. There's a Nathan Fillion interview when he did Comic Expo, and he was talking about, like, I'm about to take questions, but, like, please, like, let's not go into, like, oh, it was my favorite show, it was my favorite thing to do. Like, it was Firefly, okay? I got to be a space cowboy, I got to have all the different weapons and gadgets and things, I got to be a million different characters in one, we got to do everything that you're ever going to want to do on a TV show, and I got to do it all at once on Firefly. So he's like, I liked every other show I've done, I've always taken projects that I liked,
I was going to say, I feel like he kind of couched it, like, he's like, I can't really come out and say it, but he made it really obvious that it was because he does, he's like, I've loved a lot, he's like, I've done a lot of really great things and worked on a lot of great things, but basically it was like Firefly.
Firefly is the one that had everything all at once all the time,
Yeah.
And same thing with, we've spoken about it before, that Jim Butcher is very much like, if you can have every single religion and fantasy and myth and fairy tale in one world, then surely I can make it all work in one book series too. I don't have to pick and choose what does and doesn't make sense for the world because it all exists anyways. Yeah. And obviously, to that point too, he's also like, also all the pop culture exists. My character's gonna run on trains, he's gonna be in a western, he's gonna be Spider-Man, he's gonna be Hugh Jackman, he's gonna be fucking James Bond and Indiana Jones and all these other fucking
Star
things.
Wars, Star Trek, everything.
It's all,
Exactly.
Okay, my character gets it all too, right? So it's very, same idea. But to that point, it'd be really fun if like they just had a weekend where it was like, you know what? Let's just do this without a Denarian chasing us. Let's just go jump on a train ourselves.
Right. So next time he's like hanging out with the alphas at like game night or whatever, and they're like, so you like had to chase these guys down like on a moving train? And he's like, yeah. And you can just see like Billy and them being like, that actually sounds kind of fun.
We should try
that.
Like,
we should do that. You guys want to go do that? Yeah, let's do that.
Like they don't need to like go to an escape room with a fake being on a train thing. Like you can really just
exactly because Billy and all his nerdy friends are like they're gonna Google the train schedule real quick and be like, there's one leaving in like half an hour.
Yeah, they got this.
I was like, a race to the train station.
I just think there's so many
just spend a night running around chasing each other like in two-legged and four-legged form.
And Harry's always blowing up buildings where people are actively like living and working out of. What if you just actually looked for an abandoned shed and just blew that up? Like, how fast can we get out of this one, guys? Like,
right, the Dresden version of like shooting.
He's gotta be an adrenaline junkie by now.
Well,
like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Shooting
like,
cans off a fence post, or like
it's like stupid that he's wasting all this shit on like life or death situations when they could really be like the best birthday party entertainers in the city.
Okay, Butcher, we know you've done a couple where you're like, it's my birthday, or like my day off or whatever, but we got a couple of other ideas for like actual days off when Harry really does not have and is not just recuperating the entire time in between the next end of the world. Yeah, we want to see him like running around with like the alphas.
Let's
or things
really
like
commit
that,
to being
or, like,
Uncle Harry to the Carpenter kids, okay? Like,
right?
how fun a weekend can you really make for them?
Okay, you know what? If Charity's gonna hate me for no reason, might as well have a reason. Let's make this fun. Come on, boys. Well,
Of all the people coming down, like, Harry is, like, the most awkward because he describes himself as a yo-yo.
that sounds dangling there like a kid's first yo-yo. Like,
Everyone else is, like,
description.
got style and panache, and he's just like,
You
what?
see, Marcone goes out and practices bailing out of helicopters all the time.
I was gonna say we can only assume because we don't actually see because we're still at Harry's point of view. He just sees Michael and Sanya go out. For all we know,
But
they
can you imagine
failed.
any of those three being
Probably
like anything
not.
less than graceful?
Probably not. No, but
They like do
in
like
all
a commando
fairness,
roll at the end of it on top of
I'm like,
things.
Again,
like,
Michael is the more experienced one.
one of them does a superhero stance at the end.
Well, that's totally Sanya coming down in the superhero land,
Where he's got the-
especially because he's got the busted arm. So he's only got one plan to stabilize him anyway. So that other hand is out, keeping well away from getting caught by the cable or the train or anything like that. But yeah, no, Sanya would totally have been
So they're all down. They start heading for the engine while searching for a boxcar with Michael in the lead. Harry doesn't trust Marcone, so Johnny follows next, and Sanya taking rear.
Yeah, that just sounds so weird. Johnny just followed.
Get all Johnny.
Michael, Johnny,
he would-
Harry, and Sanya.
He would smack you upside the head for that one.
Gentleman
Right
Johnny.
now, he's one of the boys.
Yeah.
It's actually, I was gonna say, it's actually kind of funny because we love it when Harry does that, and he's always like Johnny, and he's like, don't call me, and I'm like, you know what? It's partially just it sounds better. We do that with most of them. I'm sure it's just that whole standard. It's not the word I'm looking for.
Colloquialism.
Well, yeah, but of last names, how we do. Like I know Jessica was. Throughout high school, several of her teachers called her by her last name because there was a couple of Jessicas and things like that, right? But I'm like, I almost feel now that it's suddenly been brought to my attention, I'm like, even though he's like a fictional character and we like love to hate him and hate to love him and all this kind of stuff, I'm like, Marcone has like intimidated us enough that I'm like, I don't refer to him as Johnny. I can call him whatever I want on this podcast in the real world when we're talking about him, and we always refer to him as Marcone, and I'm like,
unless it's last week's episode, which is Marcone.
Yeah, I know. You kept calling him Marcone last week.
Did I?
Yeah, the whole time.
I was going to tell you while we were actually recording, but I thought, I'll let you.
Was that the one after camp? Was that the one where I was like really tired maybe? Because I didn't catch that
You
at
kept
all.
saying Marcone, and I was going to call you out for it, and I was like, because I remember when I first started reading the books, I kept calling him Marcone.
only
She's
one
like,
of it
it's
made to the-
Marcone.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, sorry. And
No.
I had to change it in my brain, and then last week she was all like, Marcone. And I was like, okay, lady, whatever.
Yeah, no, because I did, in print, I thought it was Marcone. I totally did, until I
I think I asked you that when I first read it. I was like,
yeah,
what
and I
is
think
it?
I told you guys, I'm like, oh, it's Marcone, because that totally just sounds like, again, the Johnny Marcone, you had that,
Italian
that
mobster
yeah,
feel.
but that, Johnny Marcone kind of a thing. And then I think it was like heard the thing and I'm like, that can't be, and I literally had to I went searching for like interviews and had to go through like a whole bunch waiting till I could find one where Butcher said his name, 'cause I'm like, how does Butcher say it? I'm like, this can't possibly, and he called him Marcone, so I was like, fuck me, I guess it's Marcone.
I'm less adverse to it now that we've been saying it more and more, like since.
Yeah, well, yeah, now
Because
that
at first I was like, it's got to be Marcone.
in the very beginning, like I say, 20 years ago when I first started reading this and had it flip over, I was like, this is so wrong, this is so wrong, this is just so wrong. But I remember,
this book is 20 years
in,
old.
Yeah, in order to talk about, once we got on here, I'm like, okay, I'm going to make sure. I was like, we did.
And in another 10 years while we're still doing this book, you'll be like, damn, this book is 30 years old.
Shut up. It only took us 3 years to get through
5
a
books.
quarter of the content.
That's not bad, because there have been, like you say,
Right.
We're way off of our
Yeah, yeah, we
original
are,
projection
we
was
really
like
are.
to catch up. Would take 5 years.
Because we thought it would be like 2 chapters an episode, and we were clearly wrong.
we tried for 3.
Yeah.
Well, and in the very beginning, but now there's so much more to talk about, because it's not just the events of the book, but it's like what we know then and now and what you can theorize on, whereas we didn't have any of that in the first
It turns
book,
out
right?
none of us have a problem with talking a lot.
Right. If only we thought of that when we put this whole thing together and we're coming up with names for
Yeah, our first week's projections were like, oh, let's re-record that. Okay.
So the boys' club racing down the train tracks. Wouldn't you know it, the Denarians were ready for them. crazy.
What?
Who would have thought that they might be pursued?
Michael spots some bad guys and takes Sanya ahead to dispatch them. And then Harry notices this strange creature running to approach them. Four-legged and lanky, it looked vaguely like a cat, but it didn't have fur. Its skin was leathery, wrinkled, and mottled. Its head was somewhere between that of a jaguar and a wild boar. It had both tusks and fangs in its gaping, drooling mouth, and it moved with graceless speed.
If there's anything Harry hates, it's a wild boar. Well, I like the leading up to this, how Harry gets all, like, a little, like, everyone else is all prepped for me, because he's like, Michael takes off and is just ready to go, and then he's like, Sanya shoulders his rifle, it's like, he looks like trained military, and then he's like, and then Marcone, like, shoulders his rifle, and he's like, fuck, he looks like trained military, too. And then he's like, and then they get a few feet, and Michael does, like, the fist pump, and he's like, oh, okay, that means, and then Marcone immediately knows what it means, and he's like, oh, I guess that, and then exactly does, like, the whole, like, IC3, and, you know, Marcone and Sanya are just like, oh, yeah, and Harry's like, what the fuck, how come everybody else knows what's going on and is cooler than I am?
This
like,
uncomfortable wizard at the end going...
Right. Well, the second to last, because then he has this little bitchy moment where he's like, I'm not going behind you. You have to.
Okay.
I'm like, is she going to let him shoot Michael in the back?
I know we're not supposed to be going off topic because this is already going to be a really long episode anyways, but due south, Canadian in Chicago, okay? Really excellent show. Everyone should go watch it if they haven't. But
They still
basically,
have to get the third season. I ended up with 2 season 2s.
that's a shame.
Yeah,
But the
it's
third
fucked.
season doesn't even matter. I don't like it. Anyways, point is that it's a Royal Canadian mounted police officer who's searching for his father's killer, and the trail leads him to Chicago, and then there's a
Becomes
Chicago cop who doesn't have a partner, so they're like, all right, you two are partners now, and the Chicago cop is like the most like Chicago stereotype ever, and the Canadian's the most Canadian stereotype ever, and it just doesn't work, and they become best friends, and it's an amazing show. There's an episode when like the Chicago cop and the Canadian cop get hostage or whatever like that, right? And they need to be rescued, and they send down Canadians to also come and help the Chicago police, right? And they're like, how are we going to communicate? What are we going to do? And the Canadian,
Semaphore!
and they start doing the flag semaphore.
Semaphore!
And all the Canadian police are like, oh yeah, he's saying blah, blah, blah. And all the Chicago police are like, what are you doing right now?
What the fuck is that?
And it's like, what, you guys don't just learn this? How do you guys communicate across long distances? And it's like, we don't have long distances in Chicago. We use a phone, a radio.
I love it. I absolutely love it, because we are one of the fortunate ones that our Cub group actually has its own, like, a lot of times Cub groups end up operating out of, like, a school or a church or something like that. We are very fortunate that our group has an old, ancient schoolhouse that is leased entirely to us, so we can keep all of our stuff there.
Yeah, that building is super cool.
It is super cool. Yes, it's literally
so
this
much
old,
history.
like,
Haunted, I'm sure.
yeah. But so anyway, so we get to have all of our stuff up around the wall that stay, because it's a permanent fixture for us. And one of the things we have up there is semaphore.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually a thing on the alphabet with flags on, because there's a very scouty thing back in the day. Again, nobody ever really, but I love it, because I always think of that anytime I see that episode too. It always makes me think, and I'm like, and we still in 2023 have a thing on semaphore up in our Cub Scout. So Canadians to this day are still
We still do a class every school year on semaphore. Really? Yeah.
We still all know entirely how
Once
to.
a year.
It's just you Americans that have no idea.
And the most I ever did, me and my best friend in junior high learned how to spell in sign language, so
Right.
we could spell things at each other from across the room
Right.
when we got told to shut up too often.
Yep.
I can still spell things in
Sign language
sign
and things.
language.
Sign language.
So that's just what I think about in this one. I was like, Harry, you really need to be catching up on your military lingo and your semaphore and all these different, like,
So far, he needs to run more.
he needs to run more, he needs to work more on his signs, his long...
Clearly, he
or
needs to
whatever.
know Morse code, because it's got to come up at some point too.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that Harry's just like, I only need magic, and everyone around him is like, well, they know cool things without magic. I should have learned these cool things
it's
too.
like, we don't have magic. We had
skills.
to learn how to do it. Although
You
in
think
all
he would have learned that from McCoy, actually?
Yeah, right? What else were you doing out there? Clearly he just did farm shit.
So, you know, you ever...
He's lived in the Ozarks too long. Like, McCoy is Scottish, but, you know, apparently he's too far removed that he
Harry
wasn't,
was only out there for 2 years.
he wasn't
okay?
teaching him flag signals for, you know. Oh, look at this. Just goes back to our whole thing, like, you know, whatever episode we were talking about with, like, the homing pigeons and the things all, you know, because we were like, how did he contact Murphy so fast? And, you know, again, right? It's like, you'd think you'd come up with a nice magical way of, like, communicating over long distances, Harry, but
How isn't there a sending stone yet in the Dresden Files?
I forgot about the homing pigeons episode. That was good. One of the more random things
Went on for a long time.
So, yeah.
Okay,
So, after he gets all then,
Problem solving Harry. Just add fire.
right? Something's bearing down on you, just turn and blast. Mm-hmm. Which is not effective.
Except for the one behind him.
Except for the fact that it also blinds Harry because they are at night on a train. And he goes boom, and then he's like, wow, I cannot see shit. So, even though he doesn't trust Marcone to be at his back, but he literally just is like, I can't see anything, and he's just like, Marcone.
Add that to the list. He also needs sunglasses.
And,
I like the consideration, like, that Jim Butcher is so thoughtful on, like, putting himself in that circumstance. He'd be like, okay, I'm on the train, I'm on the roof of a train, I'm gonna throw a fire spell, what's gonna happen? Oh, it's dark, I'm gonna be blind.
I'm gonna be totally night blind for a minute.
Right. I don't know if I would have thought of that, like.
And not necessarily, like, especially when it's the good guy doing good guy shit, right? You're just like, Harry's always blasting, you know, what, consequences? What?
Right? Crazy.
I mean, yeah, Harry has consequences, but never like that. You're just like, you know, it's like, yeah, exactly. You're like, but yeah, and again, that well-oiled, because everybody else is super military, man. And like you say, Marcona's practiced rappelling out of a fucking helicopter and flicking a knife, but yeah, exactly. Harry just drops and just trusts that Marcone will take care of it, and he does.
Yeah, fortunately he does. He takes that shot and knocks the other one, or at least
down.
He debilitates it.
Yeah.
And they can't quite figure out what it is. It's not quite a beast. It's not quite a demon. Like, what the... Well, it is
a little bit like a moorbounder.
A what?
Don't worry, that's for me and my D&D friends.
Oh, okay. I was like, I don't come across that one yet. This is, again, this is one of those moments where I can't remember who it was the last time. Maybe, Billy or something like that. But basically, yeah, Marcone is all like, what is that thing? Is it like a demon? He's like, no, those usually hard. And he's like, well, then what is it? And Harry's like, how the fuck am I supposed to know? Like, I don't know what everything is all the time. I'm just like,
let me get my encyclopedia
yeah,
of
but it's just,
magical
again,
things.
right? It's like, we're all assuming Harry's gonna, like, tell us what this is now as soon as you know.
No, Bob tells me that shit.
Yeah, well, whatever, right? But it's just...
Why do you call it a chlorophene? I don't know. Sounds cooler than plant monster.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, thanks.
Right, yeah.
Seems to me wizardry is half making things up.
Well, and the thing is like, you know, the wizard trope is this ancient old wizard, and Harry's just some guy in his 20s still. He hasn't had time to become the ancient old wizard.
He's like, hey, you know what? When I'm McCoy, then I'm going to have an answer for everything, okay? When I'm like 400 and some, then I'll fucking know. But yeah, I love how, like, some moments he's, like, all mystical or, like, exactly like, chlorophene, that's what that is. And then other times he's like, I don't fucking know, okay? Like, I don't know.
Right now it's high-stress situation. He doesn't have time for even a quip right now.
Yeah, he's like, I
will say, though, that this whole scene, too, where it's like, he absolutely trusts. He's like, Marcone, and he drops knowing Marcone is going to handle this shit. You love to see it in movies when all the, you know, like, I'm thinking like Guardian of the Galaxy or something like unlikely friends all come together and they all start learning to trust each other and be like, oh my god, this guy is going to have my back even though we were enemies at the beginning of the film or something like that, right? Where, obviously knowing that we've got another, like, 15 books after this and they're still not friends, but the fact that right now it can be like, I trust you right now that you can have my back. I can absolutely hit the ground and you are going to fight this thing on my behalf.
It's hilarious because literally like 5 minutes ago,
you're like, in front of me.
I'm not going to have you at my back. You go in front of me. And then, 2 minutes later, the knights run off to deal with something. It's just Harry and Marcone, and Harry's like, okay, you get it. And exactly, like, literally, he doesn't wait, doesn't look, he just drops.
Yep.
Well, the dynamic sort of works best that way, actually, too, though, because, like, of course the knights are going to pair off with each other because they're working off the same sort of wavelength.
And the two anti-heroes are going to pair off of each other.
Yeah, no, for sure, but it's just exactly, it is. It's that funny. It's like, I am not letting you go behind me. Okay, can you see me now, please? You know, like, yeah, exactly. Like,
it's a good dynamic, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's like...
And the execution is so good.
Well, even up in the helicopter, because when they first get picked up, you know, and Michael is like, who the fuck is this? And he's like, he's the guy that, like, had the shroud stolen in the first place. And he's like, we can't trust him. And Harry's like, he's good for this because we have a common goal right now.
Worse, they're, like, stuck with each other, really.
Yeah, right? He's like, again, they know that thing, right? They're like, I don't trust you in this situation or that situation. But again, when you've given your word to do something, you are going to follow through kind of a thing, right? So it's like, yeah, you're here to... make sure we get it back, we're going to get it back. And it's like, 5 minutes from now, and there isn't a scary, like, another enemy coming back, because I'm not going to doubt that you could stab me in the back, but...
Well, so Dresden and Marcone, they end up moving on to look for the knights. To find them, just post whooping of guards. And Marcone suggests murder, but is frowned upon for some reason. So he produces handcuffs instead.
I know. He's like, because he was like, we're not just like killing them in cold blood or whatever. And he's like, why not? Give me one good reason. Why not? He's like, shut up, Marcone. Like, which we're not, okay? That's not how we do things. And really, Marcone's got a really good reason answered here. Like, these aren't even just like flunkies. He's like, these are fanatical guys that if they don't come after us, the Denarians will send them out to do other evils. You know what I mean? But they're still like, no.
But this is supposed to be the moment, too, when you realize that Marcone has no idea about the knights. That's why. They're not going to sit down and explain to Marcone, these guys lose their powers if we start killing people in cold blood. They can't tell Marcone that because he doesn't know the knights exist at all. All they've told him so far is like, these guys fight the Denarians. That's all you need to know. Okay?
Maybe.
Why are the Denarians here? Because these guys are here. So he knows that they're powerful, but he doesn't know their whole shtick. And as long as they can keep from whatever information they can keep from Marcone, the better it is. So
that's fair. I don't know if I don't know if he's completely clueless about them or not. Because again, Michael never makes any bones about hiding who or what he is, which is Harry's problem half the time. Don't go into the, like,
vampire
don't go out,
party
don't
and
go
kill all the vampires.
Well, yeah, no, but he's like, can you not walk into the airport in, like, chainmail and a cape? Looking, can you not go out walking through the cemetery in, like, your chainmail and cape? Like, can we just pretend this is low-key? And he's like, no. So, I mean, on the one hand, and again, seeing that we're a few books in and Marcone has obviously started gathering information, at least from Stormfront, if not much beforehand. Right?
He's got Gard with him for a reason now.
Yeah,
I get, but
I was going to say, I don't even think it's necessarily that aside, whether he does or does not realize what exactly the knights are or what power they hold, I don't think that's necessarily, like, it's an interesting reason I like it, but I'm like, he happily would have done it. Doesn't, the Sanya and Michael don't have to do it. He could easily have
yeah, clearly,
like, Marcone would have had
Cassius, but
yeah, well, Harry, but Marcone would have had no issue being like, hey, if they're like, oh, we're not really into that, Marcone would have been like, okay, well, I will, and totally would have slit their throats, no problem.
It's a nice little character comparison, at least, like, to show the difference between, the questionable dark gray area versus,
There is, and that's, again, what brings you up, because you just had a moment with Marcone saving Harry's life and that little buddy moment, and now it's like, oh, don't forget, he's not a good guy, he's not Harry's buddy, right?
But he didn't slit their throats here. He accepted the shut up comment and moved on.
Everybody else shot him down, but you know what I mean? But he's the first one who's like, okay, well, we don't want to leave people behind, let's just kill them. Whereas Sanya and Michael out and out would not for the whole hire. Harry, again, being more that great, be like, yeah, we don't really have a reason.
Marcone's pretty calculated, so I wouldn't put it past him to say that to test people's boundaries. Just to be like, let's see how these people respond.
How far are we?
Well, and that too,
what can I learn from them?
Exactly, but
it's true. Everything's a test with him.
Yeah, because we do know had it come to it in the fight, they would have, because
if you were looking for subtext, though, between Marcone and Harry, if you were trying to be like, is Jim Butcher gonna have these guys end up together? This is really the scene for it, though, because, like, you've got, like, the whole, like, catching his back and protecting him and listening to what he says, and then and then in the next scene after that is like, oh, here, no, you're using the rifle wrong, you're gonna hurt yourself, this is that. Like, this whole book was, like, they were being so nice to each other for, like, to a suspicious degree for, like, just a minute here, that there was, like, I was listening to the audiobook version, and I was like, I've never listened to this as them being, although to be fair, I did just read the whole, like, Rainbow Rowell Harry Potter fanfiction series, which is probably why it's on my mind.
Maybe.
If you don't know, Rainbow Rowell is an author who wrote, like,
basically cross-fiction.
It's supernatural, Harry Potter, Twilight fanfiction, but it's, like, an actual legit novel series.
Oh.
And the whole point is, like, to be making fun of all these other series. It's basically, the whole point of the book series is basically, like, what do all of the chosen Hunger Game children, Harry Potter, whatever, when they've all got PTSD and have to go be real adults in the world now that they've, stopped the apocalypse. Now what are they supposed to do when they turn 20 and are supposed to just go and get a job in the real world, right?
Is the whole point of the book, and have 3 kids.
Yeah, is the whole point of the book series, but it's also just like, Draco and Harry end up together, and so does Cass and Dean, and so does, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But still, I listened to this on audiobook, and I was like, wow, they're being really buddy-buddy right now. Like they're taking the buddy-buddy cop to, like, an extreme now in this chapter.
I'm going to say that potentially did influence it a bit, because I have never really read it with being, like, a super amount
I never have either, other than that one time. But.
Yeah, so that's why I'm going to say that maybe that is influencing that a little bit,
well,
but yes.
And I could see it as a good way to sort of set up how easy it is for them to get along. to show later conflict.
They could be good friends if they just allow it.
There definitely is that. And again, every time he showed, because again, like right from the start, he's like, well, we took a measure of each other and okay, we had to work together for like a minute, but we're not friends. Yeah. And, and then in the next book, they're like, okay, well, we need each other to get out of this, but, if this were different, like, I'd take you out, Harry, and he's like, I'd take you out, Marcone, so he's like, this isn't the time, like, that day will come, you know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, every time he comes up, I'm like, you guys are so good together, right? Like, because Harry is such, like, a childish, sarcastic,
little
wisecracking little, right? And then Marcone is always like, you are such an impolite child, and throws back just as much sass, but just
There's
in
a lot of
different
overlap between Murphy and Marcone.
yeah, but just in a different way and everything like that. And exactly, and just that Marcone has all the cool toys and the resources and the things, right? You're like, you guys make an amazing team up because, he's, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, they always have to throw it in and still remind you that we're not actually friends. And he's always got to do something bad enough that you're like,
stop touching me.
Yeah. But yeah, it is. I'm like, I know I'm not supposed to like him, and they keep telling me he's the bad guy, yet at the same time, I'm like, I still always get kind of excited, and I'm not that surprised when, like, Marcone shows up and things.
Right. So they're not at this car for very long after they handcuff these guys, and Michael moves on to the next car and beckons Sanya, who throws his assault rifle at Harry. Marcone takes it away from him so he won't hurt himself, and then the two follow. And then in front of them, once they reach them, is the knights and Nicodemus wearing the shroud, Alice sash. Personally, I would have loved to have seen it as like a blanket cape myself, but
instead of tied around him.
Beauty sash works as well.
I guess, yeah. Yeah, I guess I could kind of see, because doesn't Harry say it's only like a couple of feet wide or something? So he might have had a much harder time trying to tie the short end around his neck, whereas this way you can just tie the two ends together.
It was the shroud. Is it supposed to cover a full body?
Yeah, but just like a layover. It wasn't like, or unless they had it like wrapped around him mummy style. I'm not quite sure. I just feel like he said the shroud was only like a couple of feet wide and a few feet long or something. I feel like it wasn't even like...
Well, yeah, I think it would like not even fit like a twin bed.
Yeah. So I don't know if... again, I wasn't there. I don't know the burial...
I wasn't there.
I wasn't there. I don't know the...
Really? Jesus was a very emaciated man by the time they got to the shroud part, okay?
Emaciated?
They only need
maybe he was emaciated by... But yeah, I don't know if this is like a drape over or a wrap around. I don't know exactly how shrouds worked in the day, but yeah. But I just, feel like this is not a very big piece of... Or again, this is just, years of it slowly fraying and disintegrating if it's just down to this size or what. But
it was a California king size shit at the start, but
now it's like baby blanket. And it's like you're not getting that shit wrapped. You just gotta tie it around like a sash now.
Once your Christ has been dragging it around for a couple thousand years.
Well, I don't know. Did he? Obviously he didn't take it and drag it around for a couple thousand years because we found it and put it in a box. But...
Right, but all the Crusaders did.
Okay, there you go.
This is mine now.
They're just like, give it to me. That's mine. That's mine. That's mine.
Yeah, exactly.
No, look what you did.
You broke it, Mom.
I'll get the bigger piece.
God, he broke my shroud.
That's like the ultimate one. Oh, God, he took my... God, Dad. That's like...
God, Dad.
It's like in the Napoleon Dynamite, and that just again... God.
So they all managed to make it to the same cart, the battleground cart, the Nicodemus standing his ground cart.
Why do you keep saying cart? It's a train. These are cars, not carts.
Oh, well, same thing. Just cut off the T in the edit. Figure it out, Tansen.
Guess who's editing this episode?
Hey, you just learned how to do that.
I cut out every time you guys talk, and it's just me for an hour.
Delete. Yeah. All right, let's do this.
Something weird happened. I don't know.
Interesting. Upload.
It's hot in here because Maggie's glasses
are fogging up. I know. I literally am now. Yeah. So they've just they got through the couple of like beginner monsters, and now they're like the big bad for the thing. So.
And fight!
Hiya! Oh, man, I don't know.
Round one.
I don't know if I've ever actually played a game of that, but I have watched a lot of people play Mortal Kombat. because I was never much of a video game
I'm
or
never
arcade.
good at those ones. Those were like button smasher ones.
Yeah, I
like
can.
a button smasher.
I don't like those.
I can remember my older brother. I remember going down to the local corner store a lot, and he would often be in there playing the.
My friends are obsessed with that Smash Bros. One.
Smash Brothers
like-
was fun. I remember playing that one.
I don't like that one at all. I hate it. It's just I'm going to say there's no skill to it. It's just button mashing. I know people that actually play
that was
are going to
actually
say that
fun
there's
button
skill.
Every video game is just that, really.
But I find it to be a completely pointless game.
Yeah. Yeah, I was never into it. I don't know those ones either.
Big fight scene. Everybody versus the same one guy. Super fun stuff. So you've got Sanya takes the first stab at Nicodemus and tries to force him off the roof, and then Deidre comes up from the floor, and then she starts swiping at Michael, and then Harry's throwing off bullshit, and...
See, now this makes me... So we just were saying how Harry's got none of this, like, military training stuff, and he's like, oh, everybody else knows cool things, and you know, how he said before that, like, you know, the only reason he knows how to fight is because he's been beat up a lot, so you kind of learn eventually how to... But in this, so I'm like, again, is this just because Harry's the hero of the piece, or is this like some kind of like subconscious level, or he knows more than he thinks he does? Because I didn't necessarily see this coming. He's like, Sanya advances forward, and I saw the trap, and you know, in a second, I'm like,
And then suddenly it was heavy metal.
da-da-da-da-da. So yeah, so I'm like, again, you know enough about enough that, again, like, part of it, the heat of the moment, sure, Sanya's
walks into a lot of
otherwise,
traps.
well, that too, right? But like Sanya's other, but you know, again, you like. Michael and Sanya and them have had, like we've discussed, at
Good
least
instincts.
in this book, good instincts, but that they've had training. In this book, if no other, right, we know that Shiro trained Michael, and Shiro's been training Sanya, and Michael has been training Sanya, and while Sanya's still the new kid on the block, the knights get trained for this. And Harry really does. He kind of sort of does, yeah, there's other wizards, and you learn stuff, but again, Harry being the type of private investigator he is and blending that with it, he is going out on a different branch than most of his, you know, and yeah, there's some wardens, you do have some combat wizards like Morgan and stuff like that, but Harry's never done any of this
He wasn't
sort of...
trained in that way.
Yeah, right? So, you know, Michael doesn't catch it. And again, they're the ones that have been up against the Denarians. This is Harry's first experience with them, you know. But I'm like, again, it's just that. It's not just kind of luck of the draw. It's not just like, well, you got to give the hero of the story most of the saves or what. That he is the one that manages to see this and warn Sanya without Marcone or Michael or Sanya himself.
It's a lot. I would say it's a lot of that because you've got, like, trial by fire is Harry's whole definition, right? Like, he's dealt with Deidre like 8 times in the last 2 days. Like,
That's true.
she keeps that metal hair has flown at his face a lot in the last couple of days.
And
like,
in all fairness, for much as they have met them and know, like, who hangs out and who works together, we don't know how often they have or haven't encountered Deidre before. And yeah, we definitely have met her, like you say, like 50 times in the last
part of
couple
what
days.
keeps the Denarians alive for so long is probably not running into the Knights every other weekend too, right? Like,
Yeah, it's all
they said
different ones.
Nicodemus makes a point to show up every century or so to delete their archives, and then he fucks off for another century to go come up with his next big plan.
Exactly.
Right?
So who knows which ones? Yeah, exactly. Right. They don't. Just
But-
because they know who hangs out together doesn't mean they necessarily face these
Seen
ones
it
before.
himself too, but I think it's also again part of it is just, of course, someone's got to see the trap. Might as well make it Harry. He's your titular character, right? And also,
Titular.
just for the record, I paused for the motorcycle outside, not for your joke at all. I just want that to be very clear.
It's true. If you saw her eye roll, you would know she speaks the truth.
My brain is melting.
Don't let that fool you for one moment. Anything with the word tit in it would have got her. Okay, don't pretend that's the only reason.
Point that I'm trying to make are that it could have been, simply just like the fact that Nicodemus was falling back so easily that he was allowing the Russian to push him back so far instantly was, good instincts. Harry was like, why
Wait
the
a
fuck
sec.
is he moving backwards so much? I don't trust that shit at all. Something must be going on, right? Like, it could be
right.
1,000 things,
The
right?
natural
Like,
cynic, right? Sonya's all like, I have the sword of God to fight it. Of course you, and Harry's like,
but
is
do
that
you?
really?
Does
Is that
he really care
what's...
about that? He killed a knight like half an hour ago.
Yeah. But whatever. The good news is somebody sees it coming and somebody warns him. And while he doesn't have time to stop, he has time to pivot and maneuver and only gets a little bit hurt instead of killed. And
Which
then-
is great.
what the fuck, too? Because this isn't even just like, okay, we've all seen this in, like, James Bond and other assorted movies, and, like, spikes popping out, like, the side of your car and into you. These things 4 or 5 feet up into the air through this car. So, yeah, it's not like he would have just got his ankles ripped up or his, like, seriously, these things could have, like, chopped him off at the waist kind of a thing once they, like, you know, this is, practically all of our heights kind of a thing, you know, like. So he avoids the bad metal-haired A, and Sanya and Nicodemus stay engaged because Nicodemus continues after Sanya, but Michael takes the opportunity to slash a big hole in the roof and jump down and deal with Deidre.
It's really cool how he does that with that little triangular, like, the metal is still glowing.
Yeah, right. He's like, it's so hot. Yeah,
This reminded me more of, like, Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much, exactly. And then just drops. And I love how, like, Michael is doing all this, like, running and jumping. And again, lest you forget, the man's in chainmail. So, I don't know what kind of new agey, kind of heavy duty, but lightweight kind of material they got to work with. But point is, he's still got, like, a suit of armor on.
Dude would sink quickly.
Right, like, and he's like jumping from one car to the next, and he's dropping down into the, it's good thing this isn't like the
movie version of him would be played by The Rock.
Right, like, this isn't like the wooden cattle car of the last one that because you would, like, just, like, break right through, like, the wooden floor and out the bottom of the train or some shit, you know, you feel like feet dragging along the tracks, I don't know, but anyways, yes, he lands and whatever, goes off to deal with that. Harry tries to jump in and help out here, so he's leveling the blasting rod, and fucking Nick, who's however many feet away, dealing with Sanya, flicks his wrist and sends his motherfucking shadow after Harry, and it whips his blasting rod out of his hand, and then just, like, smashes it, like smithereens,
just
splinters it.
And my shadow.
Not fair. I don't know that one either.
Yeah, I don't know that one either. What?
But a splintered blasting rod is not great for a wizard who is needing of their blasting rod.
Yeah, considering that's what, you know, everybody else brought, like, a few guns and some knives and some...
So and Harry never bring a blasting rod to a shadow fight?
That's what I was going to say.
But, yeah, so, fuck.
Sucks, boy. Could have been the sword though. Could have thrown off the sword.
Well, yeah, at least that's still strapped to his back. He hasn't really brought that into play, so thankfully, I didn't grab. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a good question. Has Nick just not really noticed, or is that because you're like
maybe he can't grab it because it still has the power with it. It hasn't been unmade.
Maybe that's why he can't just yank it off of his back or something. Because you'd think he would have gone for that fast, but you're right, he hasn't.
Right.
And in the meantime, Deirdre's not out of commission yet, and Sanya's gets nipped in the leg somehow or other. So he's got an injured leg. And then you hear Deirdre shrieking and running away.
Right. Yeah, it seems that Michael has had success with a good old D.
Yeah. Yeah. So
and while Harry is distracted with the shadow, Nick crushes Sanya's wounded arm with his boot. But fortunately, Marcone disrupts him with the help of his little friend.
Yes. Well, it's the other is,
and he somehow manages to miss the shroud entirely with a spray of bullets, which I like.
Because Marcone is just that good.
Just above, just below.
Yeah, and again, right, it gives you this very deliberate kind of, because not only did Nick just crush his blasting rod, but then he sends all the splinters like shooting back at Harry's face, which very uncomfortable. I don't know if y'all have ever got a splinter before. Those things hurt. And you got a mass of them coming in your face. Like, again, don't know if any of you have done any, like, wood shop stuff or whatever, and you got, like, a bunch of stuff coming off a saw blade. It's the closest equivalent I can come to. Yeah, nasty. I'm like, that would just be...
That's why you gotta wear your PPE.
That's, yeah, which Harry...
Wizard with glasses, yes.
I was gonna say, Harry definitely is not wearing it. But yeah, so while he goes after, Sanya steps on this rude, like, crunches down on his fucking broken arm.
Yikes.
Like, he's just so discourteous, this guy.
Extra mean.
But yeah, Marcone does this very deliberate, exactly.
I think you just said Marcone again.
I think I just did.
Yeah, you did it. I thought earlier and I was hearing things, but yeah, you did it again.
So we've been talking about it, now I got Marcone. Marcone does this very deliberate shooting all around, and It's not super clear here if that's specifically what he's trying to do or not.
Or just incidental.
Yeah, because I'm like, well, he's obviously trying to shoot the shit out of Nicodemus, but again, is he specifically trying to shoot it and cut, or just around and not, or what exactly? But
Nick
fells him, sort of.
Nick falls away from the train, and at the same time, Deirdre escapes towards the front of the train, and the group takes a little bit of a time to recover, not very much time.
Yeah, they get like half a second here to regroup.
And then Nicodemus surprises Harry by flying back onto the train, using it, which sounded to me a little bit, but like using his shadow. He came sailing down out of the sky. His shadow spread like immense bat wings. I'm Batman.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is.
Speaking of shadow powers, I just read Fourth Wing, so if anyone else out there has read Fourth Wing and wants to talk about it.
Was it good?
Yes.
Because that was the first one, right? Because I remember
Yeah.
looking at
I
the...
haven't heard of that one.
It's like just
I haven't heard of
brand
that.
new, took the internet by storm. I almost never read books when they're new, and I read this one, and I'm totally with the craze now.
Yeah, and I'm like craze adjacent because, like I say, we're sharing library accounts right now. So she'll take out these books, and I'll be like, "Oh, what's this?" And then I'll like read the blurb, and I'll be like, "Oh, well, when you're done with that." But yeah, but Marcone, but he's like, damn it, he was supposed to just like drop here. So obviously he can, and Harry's like, yeah, I don't think you killed him, dude. And he's like, are you sure? Like, I shot him a lot. And Harry's like, yeah, I don't think that's going to do it. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, but this, or no, that's a little bit
And
later.
then
I guess.
Rising on the Shadow.
And then, yeah, and he's like, well, can he run as fast as a moving train? Harry's like, probably. I was wrong. He can fly. So, yes, that is exactly, is Nicodemus himself cannot fly, but he uses his shadow, and it's his shadow bringing him along, which is the other
Very Peter Pan.
reference they
Evil Peter
Yeah, yeah.
Totally evil Peter Pan.
Although I'm pretty certain Peter Pan is just evil. So
Depends on the version.
Yeah, I don't think I've
just
ever
read
heard
between
of it.
all of the lines. He is evil.
Interesting.
He steals, like, children that are dying or whatever like that, He's escorts their souls to child heaven.
Well, and there's a theory.
So is that evil?
Once they get too old, they become pirates because he kills them.
Yeah.
Well, those are just, I guess, the
Well,
ones
hence
that...
why the pirates keep getting
Like,
killed.
want to
it's
grow
like
up.
children
Yeah.
purgatory, and when the children are actually finally ready to come to terms with their death, he kills them, and then they become Captain Hook's crew.
Interesting. I've obviously never, read the original.
Well, the original Peter Pan,
There's a few
was
books out
written
there that
for
have released
the
in that
author
too.
of Peter Pan, right? He wrote it because his small son died or whatever like that, right?
Yeah.
And so he wrote it like, okay, he's Peter Pan, he's gone off, and that was like his coping thing, right?
Yeah.
But, it's been a little bit warped and twisted and read between the lines, as most people are done to children's stories, is that they're all actually evil in the
I
background.
suppose there's that, but yeah.
Fun fact about Peter Pan, though, it's the only domain in the world that has not ever expired, because who's the author of it? J.M. Barrie, the author of Peter Pan, signed the rights over to a children's hospital, and so for that reason, Parliament votes every whatever it is to make the domain not expire, so that every time anyone, Disney, etc., profits off Peter Pan, they have to pay the rights to the children's hospital.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's the only domain in the world that's never expired.
Oh,
Cool. Well, good for him.
Yep. It's very nice.
Yeah.
that's very cool. Thank you.
So evil or not, Peter Pan, Nicodemus is definitely evil. And he can fly, and he flies faster than a train, and he's like fully demonic.
He's pissed.
That's super useful.
Sigil is glowing. The demon has been invited out to play.
And this is the first time.
Yes.
This is the first time we have seen this. Because, again, they mentioned it before where he's like, oh, the other ones are, changing into their demon form. And he's like, we have seen no...
They rely on
Well,
their
in this,
demon form.
he doesn't really actually even change. It's just a
no.
little peak.
Yeah.
I'm mad now.
Exactly, yeah. He doesn't fully transform into anything else, but exactly, we finally see his sigil appearing.
Well, it sort of speaks to the amount of control and the power that he actually has at his.
Well, yeah, and again...
And just the teamwork between him and Anduriel is so...
Yeah, exactly.
twist,
It's like
combined.
you say is that's what they say about a lot of the other ones is that Ursiel or whatever, right? He was this crazy madman gold panner dude. He did not look in control,
Well,
right?
yeah.
The first one they met.
Deidre and Cassius and whatever the guy was with Ursiel, they fully gave themselves over to the demon. When they wanted to do demon shit, they were like, you're in charge, take the reins, do whatever you want. And Nicodemus doesn't need to do that.
He's just scared. But that's what. But I mean, we don't know for sure because we haven't seen in. But again, Deidre in that she does operate a lot in human form and stuff too. But she obviously likes.
Ooh.
Again,
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt really quickly because I meant to make this point earlier. When Butcher writes about the Denarians and their hosts, he typically does a full switch to when they're in their demon form. Typically,
The pronouns?
not the
from he,
pronouns.
she, to they?
Which name do they use? Like Snake Boy. He uses Snake, or like for a long time, Demon Girl instead of Deirdre.
Yes.
Was that just because he didn't know their names at first?
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
I could see
and,
it being a
it's not until the
combination.
very end that he kind of changes this a little bit. But when what's his name, Cassius, when he changes,
We still don't know what his demon name is. He calls him Snake Boy and Demon Girl. We don't know what Deirdre's
anytime
demon.
he's in his form, he only refers to him as that. As
Yeah.
like the snake
And again,
man.
Snake Man, Snake Boy, whatever. And yeah, I think that, again, could be very, I mean, again, it makes it easy for us as readers to know which entity we're dealing with. Like, yeah, if he's calling her Demon Girl, we know she's in her demon form. And I don't know if it's as simple as that.
Well, I took it to be more just Harry's insulting him. You know, you're not good enough for me to call you by your demon name, you know? Like,
Well, he
the
doesn't
Fallen
even-
want to be invoked, and I'm gonna call you Demon Girl and Snake Boy, because fuck you.
That too, but honestly, I don't think we know what Demon Girls and Snake Boys' names are. We don't know which demons
no.
they are. We don't know which
So I was
angels
sort
they
of
are.
taking it as who's in control right now,
Yeah.
from Butcher's perspective.
And see, this is, I think, kind of what we're discussing right now is,
Who has control and who does not.
yeah, is I don't know for sure. Like, again, we know that Deirdre is another very, very old one. Almost as old or as old as Nicodemus or whatever. Right? Like, she goes way back. So, yeah, she does give over to her demon. She does operate as the demon species type and whatever. But again, don't necessarily know how much control she's giving. You know what I mean? Like, just because she wants to take, she's like, hey, I got super wicked bladed hair shit. I can fuck you up a lot more with that than I can with, you know, slapping you around kind of a thing, right? But, like, we know that when he looked at Ursiel, that he was, like, trapped and enshrouded and, like, crucified within the stone, right? So that's where Harry was making that point where he was like, yeah, that guy wasn't so much in control anymore. That was the demon calling the shots. Like, the guy may have initially gone in and thought he was in control, but eventually the demon fully, and it was like, and when the guy started going, okay, you know what, this is pretty heavy shit, I think I went out, the demon was like, fuck you. You're not getting out of this, you know? Whereas Nicodemus is the complete opposite, whereas he doesn't need to go to that. Like, he's still fully in control and has the demon work for him, and I just feel it's kind of like the rest of them are at different levels, right? Like, Deidre's chooses to use her demon, but I don't know that she's necessarily fully controlled by her demon. I think she still has some control over it too, whereas newer entities or weaker-willed entities fully get overtaken by the...
Well, if you ever go over it again, notice when the demon nicknames are used, where Butcher puts demon nicknames versus the actual character's name, like the host's name.
Yeah.
So, like you said, the bear, you never find out what the host's name is. It's just Ursiel. And like, honestly, I could be totally far-fetched on this one, but I've been paying attention to the uses of the names throughout while I've been reading. For the most part, Snake Boy.
Quintus Cassius, who I just always want to say Cassius Clay, because that's like the only Cassius name I ever know.
Because he was like Father Fort Hill, and then, boom, he's Snake Man.
Vincent.
Vincent.
So, yeah. I know, this is... Poor Father Fort Hill's just been through the ringer this book.
But
yes.
He's referred to as, like, beforehand Snake Boy, and then Snake Man once he's... I don't know why that changed, but...
I don't know.
But when he turns back to human form, then he's not referred to as Snake Man anymore while he's in that form. Deirdre has one exception, and maybe that actually is supported by what you say, because for the most part, she's like demon girl. And there's only one reference to where she actually does sort of like this Deirdre demon girl reference in one, and it's at the very end in this chapter. Not once does it ever mention Nicodemus as a demon form, which we never do see him as a demon form.
No, like I say, this is the closest. This to me is really significant because we get the sigil appearing, which is, I think, significant in a couple of things of A, how pissed off he is with these guys all ganging up, and I think it's taking all of them ganging up on him, and to the fact that maybe he has finally been shot up enough and blah, 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 that he needs a little bit of that restorative power, because he didn't even do it like when Harry or Anna Valmont just shot him at the gala. he was like, yeah, can we move this along, right? But he didn't go to it then. And now, I think after the fighting, the running around, like, all night shit's been going on, and then Marcone taking, like, 3 very heavy, because it was, like, groups of, it wasn't just, like, one shot in his shoulder, it was, like, da-da-da-da-da here, and da-da-da-da-da there, and then da-da-da-da-da there in the hip, and all that kind of stuff, right? That, I feel like it's finally taking his...
Demon or not, humans aren't supposed to be awake for that long, with obvious exceptions that you can train your body into, but, like... he's been awake for 24 hours at least at this point, Nicodemus, right? Because he was torturing Harry last night, and now we're at least 24 hours later. He's presumably spent all the free time he had torturing Shiro, and then setting up this curse and running to St. Louis, and it's just on top of everything else, it might just be easier to be like, all right, Demon, like, let's use some of your reserves now.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like he's definitely sort of go to... So, I that's interesting. I never sort of particularly looked at it that way, I always more just took it as the descriptive sort of like, no, she's a demon, no, she's a... But that
I've read this book 11 times in the last 3-4 months, and now I gotta read it 12 times.
I gotta, like, take this point into... Wait, what?
But I just noticed there's a little bit of a... just enough of a difference every time somebody does a switch that the naming convention does change. So enough for me to go, I wonder.
Would be interesting.
Yeah.
So I would wager to in future books with the Denarians to pay attention
Double
to that.
check that one.
See if that continues.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, biggest problem of the night is with his flying powers is he's decided now to go ahead and start unattaching the different cars from each other. He's had enough of this, and he's like, let's just stop. I'll leave you bitches behind, and I'm gonna go on ahead.
shit to do.
Which is, not very effective when 3 out of the 4 are all easily able to overtake and jump to the next car. With or without magic.
Semi-easily, yeah. But he's like, I just thought you guys were all a bunch of... I was just gonna, zip, I had my little demon kitty thingies. I had my goon lackeys.
I wasn't expecting you guys
He's like, you guys just won't fucking go away.
Which is then we get another throwaway here, too, and he's like, oh, Michael, like, fair enough, it's hard to find anyone who's, got more than 30 or 40 years of practice, especially when I'm working with, like, 2,000 years of practice.
He just likes whipping that out, doesn't he?
Right?
Oh, I guess most charioteers can't sword fight, or no, most fencing experts can't drive a chariot. No, like, okay, we get it, Nick, you're old.
And, like, we get the same thing from the vampires, too, right? It's like, yeah, okay, you've had 500 years to do this. You've had 2,000 years to do this. That's not fair.
Intimidating shit talk.
But, no, okay, but, like, imagine, like, us humans, like, we're just shit-talking mice. It's like, hey, you fell into the rat trap again, you little bitch. Like, stupid idiot. Don't you know humanity's been perfecting rat traps for, like, 500 years? And you fell for it, you moron.
Right. Well, I have a college degree in rat traps, so,
right? But it just seems so funny where it's like, that's not fair, dude. Like, what do you mean, like, you're all a bunch of little babies and you can't fight me off? It's like...
Obviously, because we didn't all sell our souls to the devil for immortality.
You chose your number one enemy to be a bunch of babies. How is that our fault? I'm gonna dedicate my whole life to ending humanity, the weakest of all. Like, the Denarians could have been like, yeah, our number one enemy is vampires, an adequate opponent. No, you chose humans. Like,
right?
Vampires could have gone to war with the fairies, but they're like, no. The people we want to fight all the time are these babies that only get a couple of years
that's
worth
why,
of practice.
Because they're pissed off. They're like, Kate, like Harry has pointed out, right? He's like, humans on mass are scary. Yeah, right.
I get that.
We don't know about all this stuff. They all run in, even though they're these humongously scary things, they all run and hide for us, because when we get together, we're super scary. So that's why, right?
It's
they're
just,
like, they have to be like, that's the only thing they have to hold over our heads.
Well, that's why
I had like 500 years and you don't.
That's why I'm saying it's like, it's not fair to be like, I keep killing all your opponents,
but it's
and that's
also,
why I don't have an adequate fencing buddy.
It's
like,
also,
stop killing them then.
Well, it's also really bad because it's like, you keep killing us little bit. Like, again, yeah, we can always live for and we can still keep kicking your asses. Like, the vampires have still not taken over the world. The Denarians have still not taken over the world.
That's like the whole like recessive and dominant genes, right? Is like, obviously supernatural all have recessive genes, because at this point they would have overtaken humanity. So obviously vampires, werewolves, centaurs, they've all got recessive genes, right? And the human is the one that just outright always lives through, right? Everything gets diluted by the human gene, no matter what, eventually in the bloodline, right?
Yeah.
So this is just, part of the why. It's like, okay, I get why the humans have overtaken, I get why they're the biggest bad, I get that it's, quantity over quality, but I still don't appreciate the shit talking when it's like... Okay, choose a worthy opponent then. We don't want to go to war with you every week. We also think it's unfair.
Well, right? Like, can you all just stop being, like, ageist for a minute? Because, like, this is something we don't have control over.
So unfortunately, because of the uncoupling of the car, Marcone and Michael jump over, and they have to leave Sanya behind. And then Harry rocket jumps himself next, propelled by this fire cell. And then they confront Nick.
Fair, same thing. I'd be like, oh, watch, I'm gonna be the one that like does like the Bugs Bunny, drop down the middle of it kind of a thing. So Harry makes sure he gives himself that little boost and just like practically manages to rock himself right over to Nicodemus' side instead of like right in with his allies. Oops.
So Harry asks Nick why he's chosen Plague. And all in all, he's going for the death of hope. And it leads to more suffering and despair, which I am assuming at this point leads to more power for the Denarians. So his ultimate response is entropy is what he's going for. And I've noticed that this word keeps popping up in this book. I kind of wonder if this is a little bit of a theme to this particular novel. The descent into disorder.
Maybe. I mean, it does come up a few times in these books, so I think it's just sort of a general...
Well, and this is the first one that we've heard it multiple times
times, yeah. And I mean, well, just saying, it pops up with various things too, so whether it is, specific to this book, but it does definitely... It becomes, I think, something of a theme with all of these bad guys that essentially, they're all looking to eventually succumb to the chaos, whereas Harry and his buddies are always... trying to delay that as long as possible, right? They're always fighting against that inevitable descent into chaos and all that kind of stuff, so...
To reasonable success, because, again, say what you want about the Knights and their, belief of power and whether or not that's something that can be passed on to anyone else, right? But Harry's magic itself doesn't work if Harry himself doesn't believe in it.
Yeah.
He's got to believe in what he's doing in order for the magic to work too, right? So for these guys, it is legitimately what they're all about, regardless of how they get it done, is that they are, hope is exactly what they're there for, and it has to be their shtick. Because either the Knights' swords aren't going to work, the Knights' swords are not going to work, or Harry's magic is not going to work, or without the fact that they're all fully on board with that.
Well, yeah, and you said, you figure that more power for, and Michael, more power for the Denarians, and Michael basically says as much, right, because he's like, this whole, apocalypse is a state of mind is basically what he gets at here. He's like, it's not just that this is an event, this is an apocalypse, because Harry's like, I don't get that this is really, the end or whatever, right? And so this is where Nicodemus' whole thing is like, it's an ongoing, all the time, Michael basically said, because he's like, Nicodemus... He's like, it's a surrender to thee, it's the despair for the future, the death of hope. And Michael says, and in that kind of environment, there's more suffering, more pain, more desperation, more power to the underworld and its servants. So so that's definitely feeding into their whole agenda.
And Nicodemus says in this book that they've got another terrorist group lined up to take the credit for this, that they're going to,
propagate this whole
thing. Take the credit, do whatever the hell they need to do for it, right?
We don't have to be like,
obviously
demons
this book
are coming.
is coming out just after 9/11, a few years after that, right? And especially where we are in 2023, knowing everything that's happened in the last 20 years, right?
Terrorists are still
obviously, each and every time that's happened, there has been tons of shut down the country and stop and sit for a minute because we don't know what the fuck is going on. And obviously, every single time, nothing else has happened immediately in the aftermath because the country shut down and stopped shit into but in that kind of environment, you don't know, and everything's scary, and the whole world is just staring at them going like, who's next? What's next? How's this? And we've had, especially in the last few years, groups that took a while to take credit for it too, and you're just like, where is this coming from? What's next?
Holding their breath, exactly. Where is this coming from? Where are we guarding against,
21st century is very intimate with exactly how this works already. We know.
You can only have that high-level anxiety for so long until it wears on you.
Right?
Even as a society.
Yeah.
Fully.
And then again, as Nicodemus says too, he's like, well, then there's instantly those that want to retaliate and whatever as well, right? As soon as somebody takes credit for it, then everybody's like, hey, we're going to come kick your ass because... and again, stirs up the whole thing, keeps the whole thing going.
Well, it's a big power imbalance that way. Like, if they lose their faith, they don't work. If Harry loses his faith, they don't work. If they lose their faith, then it boosts the other ones.
And not only does that then, weaken themselves, but it also boosts the other side.
Yeah.
But thankfully enough, the Knights brought some anti-heroes to a demon fight. And when Michael steps up to do the whole hero fight with Nicodemus, because again, Harry is, the main guy, but Michael is the main
These are the arch enemies.
These are the arch enemies. This is supposed to be Michael's ball game. So Michael is the one. He steps up. He's at the ball game with the vampire on home base and the pitcher's mound and whatever. And they go to blows, right? And you've got this whole big action movie, Michael and Nicodemus fighting blow for blow for blow. And then Marcone and Harry, who again,
Such a great
love. They're so perfect.
little side talk. Hey.
3 nights in 1 day, as it were. I'm going to kill you, take care of the wizard, and then go back for the boy.
The puns are my job. Stop it.
That's my thing. Well, at least he mentioned you. He's like, I feel insulted. He's like, I just was completely passed over.
And this is great because they're like, hey, you know what we should do? We should just shoot him in the back.
Yeah.
Let's just do it, eh? Yeah.
Yeah. Great. I'm with you.
And
Let's
it's great
do it.
until Demon Girl jumps up and is like, no. You guys were thinking of this, but I did it first. I'm going to interfere. Ha ha ha.
How do you feel about this sentence, Tanzan? Just then, Demon Girl Deidre popped up. You got
That's
all of
the
it at
one.
once.
That was
that
the one.
right
Right
there.
there.
Okay.
Bam.
Yeah.
Yeah, but but Marcone learns a little bit more here because when he does it, like, that's the thing. He's like, well, shooting doesn't seem to do anything. And he's like, no, I don't think you can die or whatever. And he's like, but supposedly the swords, right? Like, I'm noticing a theme here that these guys keep going up and so I guess the swords are what are going to do it. And Harry's like, Michael doesn't really think so. And Marcone's like, excuse me? Right, and then, you get that great little moment. He's like, well, then you know what I would do? And he's like, just shoot him. And then let Michael, like, dismember him while he's down. He's like, okay.
Yeah, good plan. Let's do that.
Good plan. But even Marcone takes a moment. He's like, oh, okay, so the knights are gonna, obviously all this other shit doesn't really work against him. He's like, yeah, they don't think
Swords also don't work.
They all, that's the best defense we have.
Is that what it said? I thought he actually thought it was. Oh, doesn't.
Yeah.
Oh, I see it right here.
Michael doesn't think so.
Ignore me. Okay.
Yeah. Because then he's like, then why is he fighting him? He's like, because it's gotta be done. So
Deidre appears and she starts in on Michael as well, and now he's got to fight off both of them, which is definitely cheating. It was okay when Michael and Marcone were going to do it to Nick, but it's
Hey,
not.
that's our idea. Damn it.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? It's like, you can't cheat what I was going to cheat. Right. So this, again, I wonder, is this just the blind panic of the moment that we all do think, I'm like, I know I've done shit like that. You're playing a game. I don't even the other day when we were doing it, and you just automatically, you're like supposed to pass the ball, and you just suddenly like fling it out into the middle of nowhere, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? And you're like, I don't know if this is the moment, or again, is this kind of going back to Harry's underlying, he's got more training than he thought, or whatever, or more faith. I guess this instance is a faith thing.
Mm-hmm. See, I think this is where you're at. Okay, I know where you're going with this one, and I think it actually has to do with Michael and not Harry.
Nothing to do with Harry.
And the reason why I say that is because when he throws the sword, Michael doesn't even look. He just grabs it out of the air.
Well, that's what I mean. So you definitely know Michael, but he had to send it in there. But again, see, if I'm going to throw something at you, I'm going to wait for you to acknowledge me. Hey, Tanzan, heads up. And when you look at me, I'm going to throw it because then you can see where it's coming and you're going to grab it. Whereas this is the thing. It was like, it absolutely is for Michael's. Because, like you say, Michael doesn't need to look. Michael can. But the fact that Harry doesn't wait to see if Michael, like, for all Harry knows, he's just flung it off the side of the train.
He says he shouts it. He shouts his name.
Yeah, and then he says before, he's like,
acted without
thinking, I stripped it and threw the cane at him. So he's like, it's already out of his hands, and he's like, without turning, Michael grabs it, right? So I was like, again.
Wait, no. He said shouted Michael and threw the cane at him. So he says Michael and then throws it.
Yeah, he does, but that's what I mean. He's like, but Michael he doesn't wait for Michael to, because Michael grabs it without looking. So we know Michael did not turn to see where this thing was coming. So Harry had already let go of it, is my point, is that he didn't wait to see if he just flew it and trusted that Michael, right? So I'm like, again, because again, I've had moments, like you say, in a game where you're like, I don't know why I just threw that at you. I totally should have waited until you were looking at me and thrown it to you. But, like, people are coming and you do that panic where you, right? So I'm like, again, is it just the heat of the moment, the heat of the battle, that it just works out, that it's like, he just flings it and God's like, yo, hey, grab this? Or again, is it some kind of subconscious faith on Harry's part that he's like, I know this is going to work anyways, and doesn't wait to see, he just lets go and trusts that Michael's, like, I don't know, it could be might be nothing, might be a thing. But regardless, yes, that exactly, we know from Michael's point of view that's exactly, it's the faith thing that he gets his hands on it, no problem.
Well, I think there's an implicit trust that Harry knows that there's this weird juju that works for Michael.
Yeah.
It just fucking works for him. If Michael is doing his thing for the right reason, it's just gonna work. So he's like, here.
Well, and that's the thing,
it's
right?
just gonna work because it works for you.
Well, and
That's
the
why
thing.
I agree with in the faith, though. It's
Because just because Harry often says he's like, I'm not saying it, like, he knows it works for Michael, but he's like, me and the Almighty, we don't really see, I don't know how I feel on that thing. I don't have a lot of religious faith as such. So, I mean, obviously he acknowledges it. He's not going around saying, that's not really God, Michael. It's just some, you know what I mean? But Harry's is like, it's not really my. So again, right, that's
every
all.
now and again, Harry can tune into the station for one song, one beat, you know? He's like, this one Christian song I can vibe
Right,
to, but
are
then
you-
I gotta leave the channel again.
Yeah, it's like, it's just,
And he's in a circumstance. They're all in a circumstance where they are reactionary, and so they're
Yeah.
probably up for. They're a little more susceptible to outside influences.
Well, and even like if it were going off of the fact that Chicago was one of the biggest lands for ley lines ever, and let's say that there's like God's got his own sort of ley line sort of thing too, right? Like every church has got its own sort of faith that's connecting to this faith, to that faith, to that faith, and they're all coming from the Vatican or
consecrated
whatever,
ground
right?
and
It's
such,
just,
you mean?
but like to the point where it's like eventually, you know, the faith of, you know, God and the ley lines for the magic and the who was the Cabbage Patch Dolls, whatever their whole shtick was, like I would imagine there has to be many points when it just overlaps to a point too, where you almost get like, okay, we're all on the same team for this. Oh, and it's gone again. Like, you know, like just for that 1 second, everything overlaps perfectly. You're all fighting for the same side, and okay, you're morally gray again.
I'm
Goodbye.
so just thrown that you brought Cabbage Patch Dolls into this. Like,
He-
that's not your era. I'm just so...
Michael catches a sword and he manages to take off Deidre and gets back to the fight with Nicodemus.
Oh, I love this because he's fighting he's fighting with both swords now, and all I can think of is like some sort of Star Wars because they're lit, right?
They have the glowing
He is
aura.
Jedi
like,
Knight
sword.
right here fighting.
Yeah. Well, and that's the beauty, because she got his all tangled up, which is why he throws in the other one, so he slices it all, you know, cuts her loose with that one. So yeah, and it's just, to me, it's kind of like a whole dichotomy thing too, because he's got this little like Japanese katana, which in my mind is usually a smaller, slender, and he's got this big ass crusade broadsword.
And he's
Like
in armor.
These are not like complementary
No.
like dueling weapons. Yeah, I
Not
mean,
at all.
first of all, a broadsword is not a dueling weapon of any kind.
Can you rub your stomach and pat your head? But your stomach, your left hand is 8,000 pounds, and your right hand is 1 pound.
I mean, come on, let's give it like 10 or something. It's gotta weigh something. But yeah, But yeah, he's now swinging these two huge, because even Esperachius and Fidelicius, because there's a saber and a katana. Very different, but again, slightly more size and weight. You know, you figure you could make it work. But yeah.
Still.
No, giant hilt, yeah.
Quite different. And then Michael, who actually did do his Latin classes, Harry should be bringing him to meetings to translate for him.
Yeah, right. Although, in all fairness, he may only know his church Latin, which is not enough to carry on a
Michael only knows
conversation.
the battle cries.
I mean, I did a lot of masses in Latin, so I'm like, I could tell you, yeah, sure, maybe what, you know, this prayer is, but I'm not carrying on a conversation with you. I would come out with my laundress needs on you.
O Dei lava quod est sordium.
Fuck you, Nick.
Cleanse what is unclean, oh God.
And then Michael and Harry, then Marcone and Harry finally step up to the plate and start shooting. Took them a minute.
Yeah, we got this.
Well, they had to wait a minute, because then Deidre jumped in, and there was, you know, you don't want to accidentally hit your allies, you got to make sure you have a clean shot, and that's just finally when they got their clean shot.
Well, at least they got to follow through on their deviant little idea of like, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, actually not even, because this is when Michael first gets the upper hand. So after fending off Deidre and now getting 2 swords, he goes full on attack, and this is the first time he sort of had the upper hand. And that's when Marcone or Harry was like, holy shit, Michael might actually win. And that's when Nick's got to quote-unquote cheat again. Because as Michael is coming at him with these swords, Nick suddenly decides to not bring a sword to a sword fight and pulls out his gun and blasts Michael repeatedly in the chest. And that's when Marcone
Which seems to be another
and-
theme in this book, because it's all the villains are like,
Everyone has a gun in this book.
Yeah, none of them are like
Valmont had a gun, you know, Harry had a duck.
Harry the Duck.
here we're gonna fight with this. Just kidding. Gonna shoot you with a
Yep.
gun.
A lot of subterfuge.
Right. Well, and it's interesting that, exactly like this, Harry's always like, well, no one's expecting that. And apparently either all of these guys have just operated on that long or they're all taking a page from your book, Harry, because now they're all like, wow.
We should be carrying around more guns. Good
But
point.
this is also very typical, right? You get this whole like, well, sure, Nick's 2,000 years old. The Knights of the Cross, they're knights. They have swords, of course. But then Nick just has to not play by the rules. Like,
Well, and it's
you know
so
what I mean?
devastating, too, because Michael fell and did not move. The light of the two swords went out. Nicodemus walked towards us through the bullets, jerking and twitching occasionally, and he casually kicked the two swords over the side of the train.
Yeah, that sounds like a defeat
loss,
right there.
Loss. Like,
Yeah, like just
Oh,
again.
fuck.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like just when he was about to, right? Michael finally gets the upper hand and is like, "I'm gonna kick you," and then exactly, he's got to fucking, and then they pull theirs out, And I'm like, "Hey, I get you guys should have before," but it's like fucking Nick, you. But yeah, it's the
He's
whole
got all the
sword.
power. Like,
Yeah.
there's so much stinking power.
Well, and that's it, right? Every time you think you're fine, because again, he's the bad guy. He's got to lose. Our good guys have got to win, and every time they're about to,
Well, he's a complex bad guy, too.
Very.
This is great. I love him.
right?
I love him
Like
so much.
manages to kidnap Harry when Harry's about to get away, right? Manages to take Shiro hostage, semi-willingly because he can get away, right? It's about to, every step of the way, just when you're about to, like, okay, here's where he's going to get it. Here's where the good guys catch up to him. Here's where the good... And they are thwarting
Trixie,
him.
that's one.
But
Trixie.
they're, right? Yeah, they're like, oh, we didn't get to catch him at the airport here,
Trixie
but
the
no.
aliens.
Trixie.
gotta watch out for them.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that, like you say, it's that very, like what you guys were talking about before about how, like, the credit music just, like, doesn't play on some episodes, right? It's like Michael falls and the swords go out. So, right there, shit's fucked. Like,
Shit's fucked.
if swords are still glowing, Michael's fine. Shit's fine. Stuff is, right?
Instead of music, it's just Michael's unmoving form.
Yeah. It's that dead silence.
Nicodemus starts by offering Marcone a job. Because he's like, I'm pretty sure you're not going to accept
But yeah,
the
he's
coin.
like, don't even try offering me a cone. He's like, I wasn't gonna.
You don't seem like
Hey,
a team
Marcone,
player.
you want a job? Which Marcone's like, I was just going to offer you the same thing.
Yeah, I know. It's a nice line there.
Fuck you.
I know. Which is
I ain't your bitch.
right? Well, again, freaking Marcone, because you're like, you can see how badass. Because again, Marcone's like, well, I shot the fuck out of him. And he goes, oh, so the swords can kill him? No. And he's like, what the fuck? And yet still, Marcone is
Got
like,
the cool.
but you
cool
can come
green
work for
eyes.
me. Like,
Sociopath.
yeah, complete and total. But yeah. Which-
Devoid of emotions.
Ugh. Yeah, but yeah, Nick won't take that either. He's like, oh, right
We get like this lovely example again, how you are saying how good a team that they are. Harry sees an upcoming bridge and nods
Harry and Johnny, yeah.
to Marcone and says, and Marcone goes, okay.
So a really, really fantastic scene here with a lot of confusion and stuff like
What?
that. What it all turns out to be is that Harry gets the drop on Nicodemus and Marcone slices through the shroud.
Right, because Harry always knows that Marcone carries knives on him no matter what.
Always.
Always. So he's like, okay.
So this whole thing started because Marcone wanted the shroud. He's the one who commissioned the church mice to go and get it. He's the one who was on top of the Denarians in the first place when they tried to make a pass for it and steal it. He's the one who, allowed Valmont to extort him for a couple more $1 million in hopes of getting this shroud, right? So yeah, like they share a look and it's immediately like, forget whatever Nick thinks. Nick thinks that we want to fucking kill him. We already know we can't do that. All we want is the shroud and fuck this guy. We can separate Nick from the shroud. Boom, curse broken. All we gotta do. And so in that moment, that's what they do. Harry goes for the demon. Marcone goes for the shroud. He manages to slice it and jump.
So you don't think even that was partially opportunity? Because at this point, Harry's throwing up his shield, sees the bridge. It looks more like an escape scenario. Because Nicodemus can't get out, but it's not until Nicodemus is raising his gun, but he gets the shadow under Harry's shield and then jerks like his arm that way, and then Harry's gotta react and defend against. So do you not think that initially, like, sure, it was great, but do you even think that that was specifically the plan, or that they were just going to bail and get the fuck out of there at this point, grab Michael and run?
So basically, the whole reason that I think that, yeah, it was basically the plan from the point is that once this whole thing happens and Nicodemus kicks him off the train, he hits the water. Marcone goes back and saves him and drags him out of this thing. He doesn't just run off with the shroud. He doesn't escape on his own. And
No, I meant purely for, at this point, it's, because I know the whole reason they're there is to get the shroud, and they've gone through all of this to get the shroud, and they would hate to leave without the shroud. But at the same time, they keep getting all that right. Sonya's down, Michael's down, nothing's working. At this point, when he sees it, is it just like at this point, cut your losses and run, like retreat and live to fight another day kind of a thing?
Right, and I don't think so.
Just gonna bail.
Nicodemus is right in front of them. This is the last chance.
Yeah.
You see the bridge coming before you. Last chance. This is it. Either it's now or never, right? I don't think it's like, fuck, let's cut our losses, dude, and come back another day. I think
that was purely
last grabs gotta be now. This is it. Like, either we do it or we don't, but this is the last chance. I in no way take it to mean like, fuck it, let's go, bro. Oh, wait, one last second.
Okay. Well, it's just partially, because I've never been quite sure, because, again, it's because he's got his shield up, and then he's like, all of a sudden, Nicodemus, like, wormed under his shield, so obviously then he had to react, because he was no longer protected from it or whatever, right? And then it was simply just sort of the way he describes Marcone's here, you know. So he's like, goes for the gun arm, and then Marcone went for him with another knife.
Yeah,
and he's like,
Nicodemus
it missed
flinches.
me. He's like, but it hit the shroud. He's like, Marcone cut through it cleanly, seized it, and pulled it up. Yeah, so it was just almost, again, it seemed almost more like heat of the moment, like, again, was it planned, or was it just grabbing that opportunity that, wait, now he's distracted, I can also grab this and go. But that was all. It was more just...
Well, I mean, if the bridge is coming up, then they have to have some sort of distraction to get to the point of the bridge that they can escape. So they're in cahoots that they know that there's a way out. They're not communicating psychically right then and there what the actual way that they're going to have a distraction is, but they know that they have to buy time to get to the point where they can jump off into the water.
Yeah. I see, and I guess to me, it's just simply the fact that Nicodemus is back to it at this point. They can see it coming, he can't. So it's more just like, hey, here's a good place to jump off and hopefully not die when we jump off.
And take the shroud with us, is what I'm saying.
The shroud with
it's
us,
not
yeah,
just, this is our chance to run, and we're obviously going to run with the shroud, not run away from the shroud.
Yeah.
Is where I think it is. It's like, not only is this our one chance to get away, but get away with the shroud, the whole point of all of this.
Yeah, which it was, but yeah, to me, I've always had a hard time reading if it was simply sort of a fortuitous or a plan, just because of the way it's sort of written there. He's like, it missed me, but it hit the shroud. Like, all of a sudden, that was like a aha moment, kind of, you know, where it was. But regardless, anyways, Marcone, badass, super cool that he is, does this. While Harry is wrestling Nicodemus for the gun that he was about to shoot him with.
Yeah.
It leaves it open where Marcone is able to grab it, and he immediately...
And you get the confirmation, too, when the shroud goes, that suddenly all of the pain and the sickness and the curse effects have been separated from...
Which is the other interesting thing, because Harry has mentioned this a couple of ways along, like at the start of this in the helicopter, right? He's like, oh, suddenly I'm all like achy and tired. And I'm like... Again, Michael's been running around with a full suit of armor, hasn't been complaining about his knees aching, or, you know, Sanya's not like, oh, I'm so sniffly right now. Marcone isn't like, you know, I'm like, again, those guys have all been like walking around like, we're fine, but you're like, well, Harry's affected, you guys have all got to be, like,
maybe magical auras. Harry's sensing it before the rest of them can, and given more time, they'll get it too. Or vice versa. The God aura is giving them a little bit more of a, you know, antivirus protection before I get...
And they're just clearly in better health.
You know, even though Harry's the youngest, well, actually, no, Sanya might be the youngest of all of them, but I'm not quite sure if they're...
Either way,
I was going to say, you know, like Marcone and
they're too cool to mention that they're feeling badly, and Harry's just
or
like,
show
this
any
shit
signs
sucks.
of it. So I was going to say, the only one I would maybe give it to not being quite affected yet would be Marcone, because I'm like, they were all on the Concord. They were standing right next to Shiro, who was patient zero. Right. So Michael and Sanya would have had to have picked it up then, too.
We're also privy to Dresden's internal monologue. We're not privy to the others. And Dresden doesn't mention to either of them. If we were looking at that, say if we were looking at it from Michael's perspective, Michael probably would have looked at it the same way, saying, nobody else is bitching.
That's true.
Because Harry doesn't bitch out loud.
He doesn't bitch out loud. But yeah, it was more just the point of like, I do like how
they're all just like sucking it up and being like, I'm a trooper.
They're all just running around doing this crazy, awful, like heavy duty exertion, as we've discussed before. Like battles like 10 times more than any other like regular workout. And yeah, it's like, oh yeah, you're all supposed to feel like shit, and like you're men, so you know you normally have that total like man cold extra whininess going on, but they're just like, we're too busy saving the day.
And adrenaline will have a lot of effect on all of that as well.
Yeah,
but
yes,
he does like get the advantage. He cuts through it, gets it off, and it's broken. Nick is enraged and begins to try to choke Harry out, and is like. And in anger, and then Harry, in a last-ditch effort, finds the noose around Nick's throat and tightens it, and starts choking him back, which throws Nick into a panic.
Right. So we spoke about this religious artifact earlier. this whole thing around Nick's neck this whole time has been Judas's noose, right? The thing that Judas went and hung himself with after he realized what he'd done to Jesus and the betray and all this shit. And the noose is what gives a lot of Nick's powers to him, right? It's in itself a big magical whatever. And it's supposedly, the thing that's protecting him from harm and not being able to be killed by the swords and all this other shit. And Harry's like, but if the noose killed Judas, maybe the noose can kill Nick.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that gets the...
Well, exactly. He puts it, he's like, if it's protecting him from everything else, but can it protect it from itself? Kind of a thing, right?
The answer's no.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're coming with like a full sort of circle with the thematics here, because everything's sort of adding up. The 2,000. I've done this for 2,000 years.
2,000-year-old man.
Yeah, and the silver from that Judas got paid with, the noose that Judas hung himself with. Like, this is all.
It all comes back.
This is our Denarians' origin stories.
Totally. This is it.
We don't know specifically how they ended up in these coins specifically, but it was
it's all connected.
Yeah. Enough of a representation of evil or betrayal.
Yes, fully, yeah. And that's, again, exactly what they're both aiming to do and came from, the thing that created them. So, next, Harry is getting off this train. And he does this by scooping up Michael and leaping. Now, sure, train bridges tend to be a lot smaller than regular bridges. You don't need passenger sidewalks on them.
Lots of metal.
Or, like, a lot of extra room for cars and all this sort of other bullshit that humans are ought to bring, A train is the size of a train, and that's that. I think you'd still need to leap pretty far to get over the allowances of the bridge, though, anyways. And when holding another fully adult grown man in armor... it's not just sliding off the edge. There's still a platform that the train is traveling on.
I can only ever think of the train bridge over water that...
Stand By Me?
No. Well, actually, I think it might be a little bit similar to that. The one in Drumheller. Because it's like this massive, heavy metal outcropping over the top of it. Like, if you would jump, there's a good chance with the momentum you would hit one of those side beams.
Right. Yeah.
And you see in movies all the time, this big open no-sided...
Which again, and I'm saying, like, even if it's got no, and where we live, we've got examples of both going over the water, right? Ones that are basically just the track, and some that come with the big, massive, overhanging bullshit too, right? Yeah. But again, even if you've just got the track one, it's gotta be at least as wide as a train, plus enough, inches on either side, right? Like, it's not just sliding like a slide, right?
But again, when you're on something and jumping, right, again, you have some of that outward. So, even though I think jumping from, same thing, like when you jump off the roof onto a trampoline and things like that, right? You don't just instantly plummet straight down. You can get some of that outward.
I'm taking a little bit more of a suspension of disbelief on this one.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, the first time I read that...
Holding a fully grown man, though, like, I'd trip face forward off this thing, and me and Michael would be skidding against the side of this train and under the rack.
That's all possible, too, but yeah.
The first time I read, like, I noticed there was a bridge, and I nodded to Marcone. The bridge coming up, and I thought it was an overhead bridge.
I know. I totally
like a tunnel.
Yes,
exactly I know. Literally, the first
that's
time.
why they mentioned bridge. We're actually on the bridge, not going under.
Yeah, I know. I always felt like the tunnel too. I always literally were like they were gonna duck, and Nicodemus was gonna get schmucked into the. But yeah,
which I guess it makes sense if you're gonna say train bridge, because it means train is on the bridge.
Yeah, Looney Tunes was last book.
But there's a little bit in every book.
We just never
can't
know.
Get around that. But yeah, plus, I mean, again, maybe unsaid, but we already know he gave himself a little boost to jump the train car, so perhaps he just didn't mention it in the moment. He gave himself a little extra boost to make sure him and Michael were, far enough over.
Is that the blasting rod?
Yeah, because he's
got the raw power.
Yeah. Well, he's got his staff.
Staff still.
He's got no pants now.
I'm pretty sure that's what he used last time, was because he, more so than the blasting rod, I think he's used the staff as like a vaulting pole before.
Oh, I don't remember the staff.
I feel like the staff might have been.
Might be there.
Yeah.
Because I think, because I don't know if that's already.
This is one of those little details that's kind of like.
So much going on.
Yeah, so
I mean, if it's a narrow train bridge, it's possible that they could quite literally just fall off of it and be fine.
Yeah, but no, he definitely didn't have the blasting rod, because that was when he went to help Sanya and
We're talking about the...
No. And Nicodemus splintered his blasting rod.
Yeah.
And it was after that because they left Sanya behind when they jumped over the train car.
Okay, so he
it
had already
definitely was
lost
his.
it. Okay,
yeah,
so
so it was
yeah,
his staff that he used to pull Vault over. Sorry, that was the only point I was making.
I see.
His blasting
So
rod.
yes, he
had
does
been
have the
blasted.
staff on him.
Well, and it's like, maybe it's like, the adrenaline again, mothers lifting cars off their babies. Michael's my baby.
I mean,
Gotta go.
again,
Yeah.
it's mostly falling. Like he's got this long. He's got to give one good push off as you go, and exactly,
So yes, the two of them hit the water and start to sink because Michael's passed out and Harry's out of it. He's been shot at.
Well, he also won't let go.
Fucked
That's the
up
thing is,
and-
as we've mentioned a few times now, Michael's in a full suit of armor.
Heavy.
I
And
remember
he's muscle bound. We know this. He has to be.
in 5th grade swimming classes, they made us do the whole wear your clothes thing.
Right.
And I didn't want to wreck my sneakers. I mean, again, it's a big family. I didn't have a lot of clothes. I remember I was dumb. I wore like rubber boots. I had jeans, a sweatshirt, and rubber boots. So not only was it difficult to swim in the pool, which was the whole point of what do you do if you're in trouble and can you swim if you had to, let me tell you, trying to take off rubber boots and jeans after an hour in the pool was almost as exhausting as the swim had been. So we know that these are, things are heavy. It's
Tried
hard
to
to swim.
drown
So
you.
not only is Harry in his coat, but Michael's in this full coat. So whether Harry was out
There's
of
a
it or
certain amount
not,
of buoyancy in water, though, that's detracting at least a little bit.
but again, I'm like,
a dead weight
Not-
unconscious
not at
man
that
is
point,
going to
though.
sink.
I was gonna say whether Harry's dazed and confused or not, this would be a really difficult fucking thing to pull off, regardless. And he refuses to let go and leave him. And part of that might be again the sort of dazed, where again it's like pull your oxygen out. It's like, well, if you got yourself out, Harry, you'd have a better chance of rescuing Michael. But regardless of the reason, he doesn't.
Then
And-
there's a magical rope, or a biblical one. Wrong rope.
Marcone managed to pull both of them out by the shroud.
yeah.
Which is amazing. Like,
So good.
What?
this is this gray world that he's living in.
Yeah,
where
totally
the bad
unnecessary,
guy,
though.
who, for all purposes, could be like, yeah, fuck you guys. I got what I want.
Not only did he not have to save
but
them,
he used it.
Well, he could have been clear enough too that he was like, I was too far away. I didn't know what you guys were doing. A train traveling over a bridge.
I was going to say there's so many variables here. There's one that exactly Marcone might not have been anywhere near them, because even if this whole interaction only took, like you say, a few seconds,
That train
but
is
between
moving.
him moving and Dresden jumping, exactly who the fuck knows how far they
He
are.
had to have gone out of
If
his
a
way
train
to
is
save-
traveling 80 miles from St. Louis,
If they're sinking that bad that Harry's like cannot get up to get a breath of it, and again, you've got to assume heavy body, weighted bodies are sinking pretty fast. We already had this discussion that Nicodemus couldn't even do a Superman cape because we're like, I don't think the shroud was like wide enough to tie around. So who knows how far they've sunk, but he can still manage to get over to them and drop the shroud in, that the shroud goes far enough down to however far Harry has sunk that he can still, like, again, right? Like,
Marcone had a lot of legitimate excuses to not have to come and help them.
Well, yeah, and also is there some divine intervention that this thing just suddenly
Just so happened.
was like 10 feet long instead of like 5 feet long, and
Yep.
and not the least of it, as they point out in the next one, of whether it should have or not. But yeah, exactly, yeah, he could have. But I mean, again, this is Marcone and his practicality and certain
Some way,
areas
somehow.
too,
Well,
like.
for his practicality, the practical thing would have been to let them die.
Yes and no, but he also knows, like, hey,
He knows he can't hire him.
maybe not, but
He
it
now
doesn't,
knows that
doesn't
this-
mean he doesn't benefit. It doesn't mean he can't get a favor from the knights later on.
And it's good to pay your debts.
if he-
You don't want to be in the business of supernatural and be leaving open
Right.
debts.
I would rather look at it as a, he's got that little soft warm spot in his heart.
It's just, they were on a mission together, and until the mission is over, they're still on the same team.
I think there's all those kinds of things that
Dude, I think it was a great moment.
It's a fantastic moment.
This concludes our episode 10.29, Heavenly Floatation Device. Thank you for listening. You can find us online at freeflowrambling.com and McAnallys.ca. There we have links to other podcasts, social media, and other fun tidbits. Please subscribe if you like what you're hearing. Please consider supporting us through Patreon to keep the magic alive and to see more content. We are Free Flow Rambling. Conjure by it at your own risk.